My name is Emily. I'm 31 years old and I work as a benefits planner for a global life insurance company. Despite the decent pay, my job often takes me to various companies, providing ample opportunities to meet new people, including men. However, recently, one of these acquaintances put me through a terrible ordeal driven by his grief for money, ultimately ruining a significant milestone in my life. Today, I'd like to share the story of this unfortunate event. I lost both my parents in a car accident when I was in elementary school. Raised by my maternal grandparents, who didn't have much money, I attended local public schools throughout middle and high school. Despite their financial constraints, my grandparents took out loans so I could attend a somewhat expensive college. After securing a job, I took over the remaining debt, leaving me a bit financially strapped. It was during this time that I met David through a mutual work connection. Upon sharing my financial situation with him, David nervously laughed, revealing his own struggle with student loans. "I'm in a similar boat, still paying off student loans," he said. "So, we're the debt repayment couple, huh?" I replied, feeling an immediate connection. "Exactly," I said. "I'd love to be debt-free as soon as possible." During our time dating, I found immense happiness with David, despite our limited disposable income. Over the 3 years, David continued to excel in his career, earning promotions that improved our quality of life. As his income increased, so did our relationship's stability. I, too, intensified my efforts in debt repayment, not wanting to lag behind. David always had encouraging words for me, reminding me not to push myself too hard. "Emily, if you collapse, I'll be ruined too. You're the reason I can work hard like this." "Thank you," he'd say. I reciprocated his support, acknowledging that he was my source of motivation as well. We emotionally supported each other through the daily grind, finding fulfillment and purpose in our relationship. It was during this high point that David finally proposed, expressing his desire for us to be lifelong partners, supporting each other through thick and thin. Overjoyed, I accepted, looking forward to our future together. We decided to rent a new condo and move in together, both of us earning well. Our relationship only seemed to grow stronger, with David's parents welcoming me with open arms, thrilled to meet the woman their son had chosen, a beautiful and talented graduate from a reputable university. I recall feeling a mix of awkwardness and flattery as David's parents showered me with compliments. With no parents of my own and my grandparents, who raised me, now in a nursing home, I decided it was time for David to meet my high school best friend, Melissa. We arranged to meet at a cafe near Melissa's condo. "Nice to meet you, I'm David," he greeted her warmly. "Happy to finally meet you," Melissa replied with a smile. "Emily told me lots about you. Please take good care of her, she can be vulnerable at times." Though Melissa and I were the same age, she exuded stability and reliability. I had always looked up to her as a big sister figure, leaning on her for support when needed. A few months after this initial meeting, Melissa once again proved her unwavering support when a significant turning point came. Introducing David to my best friend went smoothly, and soon after, David and I began diving into wedding planning. However, David's work began demanding more of his time, often intruding on our plans. Even on days we had set aside for dress shopping, urgent calls would disrupt our schedule. "I have to work this weekend. I know it's a big day for us. I'm really sorry," David would apologize. Understanding his commitments, I reassured him, "It's okay. I'll try on the dresses, snap some pictures, and we can pick one later. Thank you for understanding." During this time, David was swamped with work, often having to work weekends and travel for business trips during the week. Left to handle much of the wedding planning on my own, juggling it with my job became exhausting. But despite the challenges, our hard work paid off. The ceremony and reception exceeded our expectations, with heartfelt speeches from Melissa and blessings from my grandparents, who sent their regards through a video message. As we bid farewell to the last of our guests, David and I finally found a moment to relax in the backstage room, basking in the joy of our special day. I still vividly recall the moment David's demeanor shifted, his casual demeanor abruptly interrupted by a surprised look upon checking his phone after our small talk. As he hastily excused himself from the table to take the call, I assumed it was work-related, not foreseeing the impending upheaval about to unfold in our lives. In the backyard of the venue, a steep staircase intended for staff caught my eye as I navigated the space in my gown. Oblivious to the distraction caused by someone calling from across the hallway, I found myself momentarily off guard. In an instant, my body was airborne, propelled through the air. a scream piercing the air as I collided with a powerful impact, engulfed by intense pain. As I lay in the hospital bed, bandages enveloping my arms and legs, bruises and scrapes marring my skin, I struggled to piece together the events leading to my current state. Miraculously, no bones were broken, but the contusions and bruises served as a painful reminder of the ordeal. The nurse's explanation offered little solace, merely confirming that I had tumbled down the venue's staircase, the details of the fall shrouded in mystery. Hours later, amidst the confusion and physical discomfort, another unexpected blow struck. David, who had entered my hospital room, delivered a devastating revelation, severing our relationship with callous finality. "You're useless to me now," he declared, thrusting a settlement of $30,000 towards me. Stunned and bewildered, I pleaded for an explanation, only to be met with a cold dismissal. "Just lie down and shut up. You'll only make your injuries worse," he retorted, callously disregarding my turmoil. The crushing realization dawned upon me as he callously confessed to finding another woman, leaving me reeling in disbelief and heartbreak. Love, I'm marrying her." "Sorry, Emily." David's words hit me like a ton of bricks. The disbelief mingled with the sting of betrayal as I struggled to comprehend the gravity of his revelation. "Emily, are you kidding me? We just had our wedding ceremony, and now this," I protested, the weight of his confession crushing my spirit. "But we haven't filed the marriage certificate yet. I was waiting for our anniversary to file the paperwork," I pleaded, clinging to the sliver of hope that remained. As the realization sunk in, I realized it was indeed the right decision to delay filing. David's genuine happiness at the unexpected turn of events betrayed his indifference towards my injuries and suffering. "I'll give you all the wedding gifts as a get-well-soon present. Bye," he nonchalantly declared before leaving, his laughter echoing in the empty room. "Wait, David," I called out, desperation tainting my voice. But he didn't hear, the sound of his departing laughter haunting my thoughts. Tears streamed down my face as I clung to Melissa, pouring out my heartache and despair. "It's been so tough," I sobbed, recounting the ordeal to Melissa. "I'm furious that this happened to you, Emily. Focus on healing for now. I'll look for the culprit," Melissa reassured me, her support a lifeline amidst the chaos. "The culprit." "David," Melissa's words hung heavy in the air, the pieces of the puzzle slowly falling into place. "He was even laughing when I was waiting for you to change so we could leave together. Then ambulances showed up, and it was chaos. They said you'd have fallen down the stairs. That's when I saw it. As they were carrying you, he had this nasty smile on his face," she recounted, a chill running down my spine at the revelation. "Did David push me down the stairs? What could he possibly gain from it?" The questions gnawed at my mind, but I pushed them aside, focusing on healing, as Melissa advised. As my physical wounds began to heal, so did the wounds of my heart, transforming my sorrow into fierce anger. I couldn't rest until the responsible parties were held accountable. A few weeks later, armed with evidence and fueled by the thirst for justice, Melissa and I lured David to a cafe, ready for payback. Determined to seek justice, I confronted David, who appeared noticeably different from the man I once knew. His flamboyant attire and unfamiliar accessories spoke volumes about the changes in him. Despite his seemingly good mood, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease as he handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I inquired, eyeing the sack of cash within. "It's a get-well gift," he replied casually, his nonchalance grating on my nerves. "Good to see that both your scars and bruising have healed." "How generous of you," I retorted, unable to conceal my sarcasm. "Do tell, what brought this on? Why did you betray Emily?" I demanded, my anger simmering beneath the surface. David's smirk only intensified, sending a shiver down my spine. "Actually," he began, his tone dripping with arrogance, "the woman I've been seeing won $10 million in the lottery." $10 million? I exclaimed, disbelief washing over me. "So what's $10,000 or $20,000 to me now?" he continued, his callousness leaving me speechless. It dawned on me that David had been involved with another woman even before we exchanged vows. She had struck it rich shortly after our wedding ceremony, prompting David to reconsider our marriage in favor of a new life with her. The revelation fueled the flames of revenge within me. "I can't forgive you," I declared, my voice trembling with fury. "I'll report you to the police." "Whoa there," David interjected, his tone suddenly grave. "Don't make it sound like I pushed you. There's no evidence." His words sent a chill down my spine, reminding me of the uphill battle we faced in proving his guilt. True, I conceded, recalling the staff's testimony of my supposed slip and fall. But they only reported what they saw. Melissa had done her own in-depth investigation. I'm really sorry for the trouble I've caused. He was blinded by the $10 million too, Rebecca said, her voice trembling with guilt. Her tearful confession was heart-wrenching, and I couldn't help but believe her sincerity. After apologizing profusely, she quietly disappeared without saying a word to David. Several weeks later, I received a desperate call from David, asking to meet and talk. When I saw him again, he was much more modestly dressed than before, a stark contrast to his previous flamboyance. I can't get in touch with Rebecca. Do you know where she is? He asked, his voice filled with anxiety. Why would I know where your $10 million lady is? I replied, my tone cold. Right? Listen, Emily, I've given you a total of $40,000, right? No, it's actually $60,000, including the compensation. I corrected him. Is that so? I hardly remember. Can you return half of that money, or even just $10,000? He pleaded. No, but I do have some valuable information for you. Information. David's curiosity was piqued. Yes, information that's quite important for you, I said, taking out my mobile phone. I played a pre-recorded video, and David's eyes widened in disbelief as Rebecca appeared on the screen. David, I have to apologize to you. I'm really sorry. The story about me winning $10 million in the lottery was a lie. I lied because I couldn't bear the thought of you marrying someone else, she confessed. I'm truly sorry. I just apologized to Emily as well. I plan to disappear from this town, and I can't tell you where I'm going. I'm really sorry for ruining both of your lives. David was stunned into silence, his shock palpable. The weight of his actions and the truth of Rebecca's deceit left him speechless. Pushing his spouse down the stairs for a non-existent $10 million, being fooled by a lie, impulsively committing a crime, and losing $60,000 in the process, his pathetic reality was laid bare. I left David as he was, head down and immobile, overwhelmed by the consequences of his actions and the ruin of his own making. I walked out of the cafe, gripping the receipt tightly. A few days after that encounter, my phone buzzed again. Another call from David. I've come to my senses. I was wrong. Can we start over? He pleaded. You've got some nerve spouting lines like that, especially after you mess up a chapter of my life, I retorted. The real culprit here is Rebecca for lying to me. If she hadn't lied, so you wouldn't have pushed me down the stairs, blinded by greed. I cut him off. Cut it out. You were already the worst when you cheated on me. Who would give a man like you a second chance? Those $10 million from Rebecca exposed the real David. In that sense, I could almost thank her. Her lie saved me from wasting my life on a worthless man. David tried to keep the conversation going, desperate to keep me on the line. It was a pathetic and futile struggle. I ended the call, feeling like I was pushing away someone who was desperately chasing after me. David had quit his job long ago, banking on Rebecca's $10 million lie. Now, it seemed he had to find new work. Melissa told me this as we shared drinks at my place over the weekend. She'd run into David in town and heard it straight from him. He can't get steady work because of his criminal record. Last I saw him, he was delivering food on a bike, she said. So he's doing delivery? Sounds like gig work, I mused. Seems that way. He's doing whatever he can find, Melissa replied, sharing some of David's job-hopping history. Traffic control for road work, janitorial services, lunchbox factory staff, warehouse worker. He looked worn out, all tan and sunburned, she added. It was clear that David's life had taken a downward spiral, a stark contrast to the bright future he once envisioned. This is karma for betraying Emily, I told David, and he nodded, understanding the gravity of his actions. If he's aware, that's good. I hope he continues to repent for the rest of his life. Would you consider starting over with him if the chance came? Melissa asked. No way. A man who would push a bride down the stairs in her wedding dress. Are you kidding? I replied. Melissa and I laughed heartily at the absurdity of the idea. Even if he threw $10 million my way, I'd still decline. A few days later, David contacted me again. Can you lend me $100? I'm really struggling here, he pleaded. No way. Please don't contact me again. And no following me. If you do, I'm going to the police. Wait, Emily, I'm really sorry, he tried again. Don't you dare call me by my first name, I snapped, hanging up and immediately blocking his number. If he crosses a line, I have no problem reporting him. Since parting ways with David, my life has been smooth. I got a good settlement, and he even paid for the venue. My grandparents in the nursing home and my coworkers all sympathize with me, which is to be expected. Anyone would feel sorry for a bride betrayed right after her wedding. But I'm not overly pessimistic about my current situation. My career is thriving and my personal life is fulfilling. Melissa and I are even thinking of going to a singles event. Having a divorce history isn't going to hold me back. I'm strong enough to make my fall down the stairs a talking point. Life has so much more in store, and I'm determined to find someone amazing and build a happy home.
The silence in my kitchen is deafening as I stare at the brown cardboard box sitting on the counter, my heart pounding against my chest. It's been 3 days since I mustered up the courage to open the package that arrived unexpectedly, and I still can't wrap my mind around its contents. Inside was a leather-bound diary and a small digital voice recorder, both belonging to my daughter Leela. But that's not what has my stomach in knots and my thoughts spiraling out of control. It's the note that accompanied them, written in Lila's unmistakable handwriting. Mom, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry for leaving you like this, but I couldn't bear the pain any longer. The truth about my life and my marriage is within these pages and recordings. I hope they bring you the closure I couldn't find. Love always, Leela. Gone? What does she mean? Gone? My beautiful, vibrant daughter, who had her whole life ahead of her, couldn't possibly be. I shake my head, trying to dislodge the thought. No, there has to be some mistake. Lila would never. But even as I try to deny it, deep down, I know it's true. The sinking feeling in my gut tells me that my worst fear has come to pass. With trembling hands, I reach for the diary and flip it open to the first page. As I begin to read, Lila's voice fills my head, as if she's standing right beside me, whispering her secrets. I don't know how much longer I can keep up this facade. Derek, the man I thought I knew, the man I married, he's not who I thought he was. He's controlling, manipulative, and I fear he's involved in something sinister. I'm scared, Mom. I don't know what to do or who to turn to. My vision blurs with tears as I continue reading, each page revealing a new layer of my daughter's hidden torment. The man she loved, the man I welcomed into our family, is nothing but a monster in disguise. As I reach the final entry, dated just 2 weeks ago, my heart shatters into a million pieces. I can't take it anymore. The constant fear, the isolation, the pain. It's too much. I've tried to be strong, but I'm at my breaking point. I'm sorry, Mom. I love you, and I hope someday you can forgive me. A gut-wrenching sob escapes my throat as the reality of what I've just read sinks in. My daughter, my precious Lila, took her own life to escape the hell her husband put her through. Anger, white-hot and all-consuming, surges through my veins. Derek, that bastard, drove my daughter to this. He destroyed her, piece by piece, until she couldn't bear to live another day. I clench my fists, my nails digging into my palms as a newfound determination takes hold. I will not let my daughter's death be in vain. I will uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Derek will pay for what he's done. Wiping away my tears, I reach for the digital recorder and press play. Lila's voice, tinged with fear and desperation, fills the room. Derek, please, you're hurting me. Why are you doing this? I thought you loved me. The recording ends abruptly, and I'm left in silence once again. But in my mind, a plan begins to take shape. I will retrace Lila's steps, unravel the web of lies and deceit that Derek has spun, and bring him to justice. I owe it to my daughter, to the memory of the beautiful, loving soul she was. I will not rest until the truth is exposed and Derek faces the consequences of his actions. With a heavy heart but an unwavering resolve, I tuck the diary and recorder back into the box and close the lid. It's time to get to work. For Lila, for the justice she deserves. The sun is barely peeking through the curtains when I find myself hunched over my laptop, a steaming mug of coffee beside me. It's been days since I discovered Lila's diary and the truth about her marriage, and I haven't been able to sleep more than a few hours at a time. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face, hear her voice pleading for help. I've been combing through her social media accounts, her emails, anything that might give me a clue as to what really happened. It's not easy, but I'm determined to piece together the puzzle of her life. A notification pops up on my screen, and my heart nearly stops. It's a message from Emily, Lila's best friend's childhood. We haven't spoken in months. Not since the funeral. Marian, I know it's been a while, but I need to talk to you. It's about Lila. Can we meet? My fingers tremble as I type out a response, agreeing to meet her at a nearby cafe. I grab my coat and keys, my mind racing with questions. An hour later, I'm sitting across from Emily, her eyes red-rimmed and her hands clutching a cup of tea. She takes a deep breath before speaking. Marian, there's something you need to know about Derek. He was horrible to Lila at work. He was her supervisor, but he used his position to control her, to make her life miserable. I feel my stomach drop, my worst fears confirmed. What do you mean? What did he do? Emily's voice shakes as she recounts the stories Lila told her. The constant criticism, the belittling remarks, the threats to her career if she didn't comply with his demands. It's a nightmare come to life. She was so scared, Marian, she didn't know what to do. He had so much power over her, and she felt trapped. I tried to convince her to leave him, to report him to HR, but she was terrified of what he might do. Tears stream down my face as I listen, my heart breaking for my daughter. How could I not have seen it? How could I have let this happen? Emily reaches across the table and takes my hand. There's more. I think Derek was involved in something illegal at work. Lila overheard him talking on the phone one night, something about money laundering and offshore accounts. She was going to go to the authorities, but then she trails off, unable to finish the sentence. We both know how the story ends. I take a deep breath, my mind reeling with this new information. Derek wasn't just a monster at home, he was a criminal, and he drove my daughter to take her own life. I thank Emily for her courage in coming forward, and promise to keep her updated on my investigation. As I leave the cafe, I feel a renewed sense of purpose. I will not rest until I have exposed Derek for the vile creature he is. My next stop is Lila's former workplace. I know it's a long shot, but I have to try. I approach the receptionist, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm here to see Derek Voss. It's urgent. The receptionist gives me a wary look but nods and picks up the phone. A few moments later, she hangs up and turns to me. I'm sorry, but Mr. Voss is not available. He's in a meeting. I lean in closer, my voice low and insistent. Please, it's about his wife. I'm her mother, and I need to speak with him. It can't wait. The receptionist hesitates for a moment before nodding and picking up the phone again. I wait, my palms sweating and my stomach in knots. Finally, she hangs up and turns to me. He'll see you now. His office is down the hall, last door on the right. I take a deep breath and make my way down the hall, my heart racing with every step. I have no idea what I'm going to say to him, but I know I have to confront him. For Lila, for the truth. I reach for the door handle, my hand shaking. This is it, the moment of truth. I take one last deep breath and turn the handle, stepping into the lion's den. Derek's office is sleek and modern, all glass and chrome. He sits behind a large mahogany desk, his face a mask of surprise and confusion as I enter. Marian, what are you doing here? He asks, rising from his chair. I don't bother with pleasantries. I know what you did to Lila. I know about the harassment, the threats, and I know about your illegal activities. His eyes widen for a moment before he regains his composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Lila and I had our problems, but I loved her. I would never hurt her. I slam my hands on the desk, leaning forward until I'm inches from his face. Don't lie to me, Derek. I have proof. Emails, recordings, witness statements. You made her life a living hell, and you drove her to take her own life. He steps back, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Marian, please, let's talk about this rationally. I know you're grieving, but you're not thinking clearly. I let out a humorless laugh. Oh, I'm thinking very clearly. For the first time in months, I see you for exactly what you are, a monster. He shakes his head, his expression one of pity. I'm sorry you feel that way, Marian, but I'm not the villain here. Lila had her own demons, her own struggles. I tried to help her, but she pushed me away. I feel my anger rising, hot and fierce. You're a liar and a coward, Derek. You preyed on her vulnerabilities, you manipulated her, and you destroyed her. And for what? Money? Power? Your own twisted satisfaction? He opens his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. I don't want to hear your excuses. I want justice for my daughter. and I will not rest until I see you behind bars. I turn to leave, but he calls out after me. Marion, wait, let's talk about this. We can work something out. I pause at the door, my hand on the handle. There's nothing to work out, Derek. You're going to pay for what you did to Lila, one way or another. I walk out of his office, my heart racing and my mind reeling. I know I'm in over my head, that Derek is a powerful man with connections and resources, but I also know that I can't do this alone. That's when I remember Jonah, Lila's old friend from law school. He was always the level-headed one, the voice of reason. If anyone can help me navigate this legal minefield, it's him. I pull out my phone and dial his number, my fingers shaking slightly. He answers on the second ring. Marion, hi, what's going on? I take a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Jonah, I need your help. It's about Lila and Derek. There's a pause on the other end of the line. What about them? I close my eyes, fighting back the tears. Derek killed her, Jonah. Maybe not with his own hands, but he drove her to it. He harassed her, threatened her, made her life a living hell, and I have proof. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, Marion, I'm listening. Tell me everything. And so I do. I pour out the whole sordid story, from the diary to the recordings to my confrontation with Derek. By the time I'm finished, I'm emotionally drained, but more determined than ever. I need your help, Jonah. I can't do this alone. Derek is too powerful, too connected, but with your legal expertise and my evidence, we can bring him down. We can get justice for Lila. Jonah is silent for a long moment, and I hold my breath, waiting for his response. I'm in, Marion. Let's nail this bastard to the wall. I feel a rush of relief and gratitude. With Jonah on my side, I know we can do this. We can make Derek pay for what he did to my daughter. Thank you, Jonah. Thank you for believing in me, for fighting for Lila. Of course, Marion. She was my friend too, and no one deserves what happened to her. We'll make this right. I promise. I hang up the phone, feeling a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Derek may think he's untouchable, but he's about to learn the hard way that a mother's love knows no bounds, and when it comes to my daughter, I will move heaven and earth to get justice. The next few days are a blur of activity. Jonah and I meet up to go over the evidence I've gathered, poring over emails and listening to the recordings Lila left behind. It's painful, reliving her trauma, but I know it's necessary if we want to bring Derek to justice. We need more, Jonah says, rubbing his eyes. This is a good start, but it's not enough to take him down. We need concrete proof of his illegal activities at work. I nod, my mind racing. What about surveillance? If we can catch him in the act, that would be hard to deny. So Jonah considers this for a moment. It's risky, but it might be our best shot. I know a guy who can set us up with some discreet cameras and microphones. We'll have to be careful, though. If Derek catches on, it could all fall apart. I take a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm willing to take that risk, for Lila. And so we put our plan into motion. Jonah's contact comes through with the surveillance equipment, and we spend hours strategizing on how to plant it in Derek's office without getting caught. Finally, the day arrives. I walk into Derek's workplace, my heart pounding in my chest. I know I only have a small window of time to get in and out before he returns from his lunch meeting. I make my way to his office, trying to look as inconspicuous as possible. The door is locked, but I came prepared. With shaking hands, I pull out the lock-picking kit Jonah gave me and get to work. It takes longer than I anticipated, and I can feel the sweat beading on my forehead. But finally, I hear the click of the lock, and the door swings open. I move quickly, placing the cameras and microphones in strategic locations around the room. I'm just about to leave when I hear voices in the hallway. My heart stops. It's Derek, and he's heading this way. I look around frantically, trying to find a place to hide. There's a small supply closet in the corner, and I rush over to it, slipping inside just as the door to the office opens. I hold my breath, trying to slow my racing heart. I can hear Derek talking on the phone, his voice muffled through the closet door. I told you I'll have the money by the end of the week. No, I don't care how you get it. Just make it happen. There's a pause, and then he speaks again, his tone more menacing. Listen, I've got a lot riding on this deal. If it falls through, there will be consequences, and trust me, you don't want to know what those consequences are. I feel a chill run down my spine. This is it. This is the proof we need. I wait until I hear Derek leave before I emerge from the closet, my legs shaking. I quickly finish placing the last of the surveillance equipment and then slip out of the office, my heart still racing. I meet up with Jonah back at his place, and we quickly download the footage from the cameras. What we see is damning. Derek meeting with shady characters, discussing large sums of money and offshore accounts. It's all there, in black and white. "We got him," Jonah says, a grim smile on his face. "This is enough to put him away for a long time." But as we're going through the footage, we stumble upon something else. A conversation between Derek and one of his associates, discussing his plans to flee the country. "I've got a private jet lined up," Derek says. "I'll be gone before anyone even knows what happened." My blood runs cold. If Derek gets away, all of this will have been for nothing. We'll never get justice for Lila. "We have to move fast," I say, my voice shaking. "We can't let him escape." Jonah nods, his expression serious. "I'll make some calls, see if we can get the authorities involved. But Marion, you need to be prepared. Once we go down this road, there's no turning back." I take a deep breath, my resolve hardening. I'm ready. Let's take this bastard down. The next morning, I wake up with a sense of urgency. We need to act fast if we want to catch Derek before he disappears. I call up some of my late husband's old contacts in law enforcement, hoping they can help us track Derek's movements without tipping him off. To my relief, they agree to help. They promise to keep an eye on his bank accounts and travel plans, and to let us know if he makes any suspicious moves. With that taken care of, Jonah and I turn our attention to the upcoming industry conference. It's the perfect opportunity to expose Derek in front of his colleagues and the media. We spend the next few days preparing, gathering all the evidence we have, and putting together a solid case. It's exhausting work, but I feel a sense of purpose that I haven't felt in months. Finally, the day of the conference arrives. Jonah and I arrive early, scoping out the venue and setting up our equipment. We've arranged for a small press conference in one of the side rooms, where we plan to present our evidence to a select group of journalists. As the day goes on, I keep a close eye on Derek. He's schmoozing with his colleagues, acting like he doesn't have a care in the world. It makes my blood boil, knowing what he's done. Finally, it's time for our press conference. Jonah and I take the stage, our hearts pounding. I take a deep breath and begin to speak. "Thank you all for coming. My name is Marion Fraser, and I'm here today to expose a criminal hiding in plain sight." I see Derek's face in the crowd, his expression one of confusion and anger. But I don't let it faze me. I press on, laying out the evidence we've gathered piece by piece. The emails, the recordings, the surveillance footage, it's all there, painting a damning picture of a man who thought he was above the law. As I speak, I see the journalists' faces change from skepticism to shock to outrage. They scribble furiously in their notebooks, their cameras flashing. And then, just as I'm about to wrap up, Derek stands up and starts shouting, "This is ridiculous. These accusations are completely baseless. I'm an honest businessman, and I won't stand for this slander." But even as he speaks, I can see the panic in his eyes. He knows we have him cornered. Jonah steps forward, his voice calm but firm. "Mr. Voss, we have evidence that you've been involved in financial fraud and workplace harassment. We also have reason to believe that you're planning to flee the country to avoid prosecution." Derek's face goes white. He looks around wildly, as if searching for an escape route. But it's too late. The doors to the room burst open, and a team of law enforcement officers rush in. They surround Derek, their guns drawn. "Derek Voss, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and harassment. You have the right to remain silent." As they read him his rights, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's over. We did it. The journalists are in a frenzy, shouting questions and snapping photos, but I tune them out, focusing on the sight of Derek being led away in handcuffs. Jonah puts a hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. "You did it, Marion. You got justice for Lila." I nod, tears welling up in my eyes. I just wish she was here to see it. As we leave the conference room, I feel a sense of exhaustion and elation. It's been a long, hard road, but we finally made it to the end. I know there will be more battles ahead, more challenges to face. But for now, I allow myself a moment of triumph. For Lila, for myself, for all the victims who never got to see their abusers brought to justice. We may not be able to change the past, but we can fight for a better future. And that's exactly what I plan to do, one day at a time. The aftermath of Derek's arrest is a media circus. Reporters hound me for interviews, wanting to know every detail of the story. I do my best to keep a low profile, focusing on the legal proceedings and letting Jonah handle the press. But even as the court case moves forward, I can't shake the feeling that there's more to the story. I keep thinking back to Lila's diary, to the pain and fear she expressed in those pages. I know Derek is responsible for her death, but I need to hear it from his own lips. I need him to admit what he did. So when Jonah tells me that Derek is willing to meet with me, I jump at the chance. I know it's a risk, that he could try to manipulate me or twist the truth. But I have to take that chance for Lila's sake. The meeting takes place in a small, windowless room at the jail. Derek is brought in, his hands and feet shackled. He looks thinner than the last time I saw him, his face gaunt and his eyes hollow. He sits down across from me, his expression wary. "What do you want, Marion?" I take a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want the truth, Derek. I want you to admit what you did to Lila." He scoffs, shaking his head. "I already told you I didn't do anything. Lila was troubled. Sincere. She had her own issues. I tried to help her, but she wouldn't let me." I feel my anger rising, hot and fierce. "Don't give me that bullshit, Derek. I know what you did. I have proof. You harassed her, you threatened her, you made her life a living hell." He leans back in his chair, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "You don't know anything, Marion. You think you have it all figured out, but you don't. Lila was weak. She couldn't handle the pressure. That's not my fault." I slam my hand down on the table, making him flinch. "Shut up. Just shut up and listen to me. Lila was not weak. She was strong and brave, and she deserved so much better than you. You broke her, Derek. You broke her spirit and her heart, and you drove her to take her own life." I see a flicker of something in his eyes, a hint of remorse or guilt. But it's gone just as quickly, replaced by a cold, hard stare. "You want the truth, Marion? Fine, I'll give you the truth. Yes, I was hard on Lila at work. Yes, I pushed her to be better, to work harder. But that's because I knew she had potential. I was trying to help her, to make her stronger." I shake my head in disbelief. "You call that helping? You call that making her stronger? You destroyed her, Derek. You took everything that was good and bright about her, and you crushed it." He leans forward, his face inches from mine. "You know what, Marion? Maybe you're right. Maybe I did push her too hard. Maybe I did contribute to her breakdown. But let me ask you this. Where were you when she needed help? Where were you when she was crying herself to sleep every night, when she was popping pills just to get through the day? You were too busy with your own life to notice what was happening right under your nose." I feel like I've been slapped. His words cut deep, hitting on the guilt and regret that I've been carrying around for months. But I won't let him see that. I won't give him the satisfaction. I stand up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is on you, Derek. Lila's death, the pain she went through, that's all on you. And now the world knows it too. You're going to pay for what you did, one way or another." I turn to leave, but his voice stops me. "You think this is over, Marion? You think you've won? Think again. I have powerful friends, people who will make sure I never see the inside of a jail cell. And when I get out, I'm coming for you and everyone else who tried to bring me down." I don't turn around. I don't give him the chance to see the fear in my eyes. I just keep walking, my head held high. This isn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, I'll take the victory where I can get it. For Lila, for justice, for the chance to make things right. In the weeks following Derek's arrest, the case against him builds steadily. The evidence we gathered, along with testimony from his victims and colleagues, paints a damning picture of a man who abused his power and his position. I attend every court hearing, watching as Derek's lawyers try to spin the story in his favor. They claim that he's being unfairly targeted, that the charges against him are baseless and politically motivated. But the truth is undeniable. The emails, the recordings, the witness statements. They all point to a pattern of harassment and abuse that stretches back years. And then there's the financial fraud. As the investigators dig deeper into Derek's business dealings, they uncover a web of shell companies and offshore accounts, all designed to hide his ill-gotten gains. It's clear that Derek wasn't just a bully and a harasser. He was a criminal, through and through. The day of the verdict arrives, and I'm in the courtroom, my heart pounding in my chest. Jonah is beside me, his hand resting reassuringly on my arm. The judge reads out the charges, his voice solemn and grave. Embezzlement, fraud, harassment, and a host of other crimes, all adding up to a life sentence in prison. I watch as Derek's face pales, his eyes widening in shock and disbelief. He tries to stand up to protest, but the bailiffs force him back down into his seat. The judge bangs his gavel, and it's over. Derek is led away in handcuffs, his head bowed and his shoulders slumped. I feel a rush of emotion, relief, satisfaction, and a deep, aching sadness. Lila is gone, and nothing can bring her back. But at least now, her tormentor is facing justice. The media descends on the courthouse steps, clamoring for a statement. I take a deep breath and step forward, my voice shaking but clear. Today, justice was served. Derek Voss is a monster who preyed on the vulnerable and the defenseless. He destroyed lives and shattered families, all in the name of his own greed and ego. But now, he's been exposed for what he truly is. He'll spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying for his crimes. The reporters shout questions, but I ignore them. I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it for Lila, and for all the other victims who never got to see their abusers brought to justice. As I walk away from the courthouse, I feel a sense of emptiness. The fight is over, but the pain lingers on. In the days and weeks that follow, I watch as Derek's life unravels. His assets are seized, his business empire crumbles, and his reputation is left in tatters. His professional licenses are revoked, and he's expelled from the industry organizations that once welcomed him with open arms. Even his so-called friends and allies abandon him, eager to distance themselves from the scandal and the shame. It's a fitting end for a man who thought he was untouchable, who believed that his wealth and his power would protect him from the consequences of his actions. But as I sit in my quiet house, surrounded by the memories of my daughter, I find little comfort in his downfall. Lila is still gone, and the hole she left in my heart will never be filled. The pain of losing her, of knowing that I failed to protect her when she needed me most, is a burden I will carry for the rest of my life. But I also know that I have to keep going, to find a way to honor her memory and to make sure that her story is never forgotten. So I pour myself into my work, into advocating for victims of abuse and harassment. I speak out against the culture of silence and complicity that allows monsters like Derek to thrive. And every day, I wake up and I keep fighting. For Lila, for myself, and for all the other daughters and mothers and sisters out there who are still waiting for justice. It's not easy, and there are days when the pain and the grief threaten to overwhelm me. But I know that I have to keep going, to keep pushing forward, because that's what Lila would have wanted. And that's the only way I know how to honor her memory. The months after Derek's conviction are a blur of activity. There are interviews to give, speeches to make, and a never-ending stream of people who want to hear Lila's story. It's exhausting, but it's also strangely cathartic. Every time I tell her story, I feel like I'm keeping her memory alive, like I'm giving voice to the pain and the suffering that she endured. But I know that I can't keep going like this forever. I need to find a way to channel my grief and my anger into something productive, something that will make a real difference in the world. That's when I decide to start the Lila Fraser Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting victims of workplace harassment and abuse. I pour all of my energy into getting the foundation off the ground, working long hours, and tapping into every resource and contact I have. It's not easy, but slowly, surely, things start to take shape. We launch a website and a hotline offering support and resources to anyone who needs them. We partner with law firms and advocacy groups working to change the laws and the culture that allow abuse to flourish in the workplace. And we tell stories of survivors, of heroes, of ordinary people who found the courage to stand up and speak out against their abusers. It's hard work, but it's also incredibly rewarding. Every time I hear from someone who says that the foundation has helped them, that they feel seen and heard and supported, I know that I'm doing something meaningful. But the real test comes when we organize our first big event, a community gathering to raise awareness about workplace harassment and to honor the memory of those who have been lost to it. I'm nervous as I step up to the podium, my hands shaking and my heart pounding in my chest. But as I look out at the crowd, at the faces of the survivors and the allies and the advocates, I feel a sense of strength and purpose washing over me. Thank you all for being here today. I begin, my voice trembling slightly. We are gathered here to honor the memory of my daughter Layla and all those who have suffered at the hands of workplace abusers. I take a deep breath, fighting back the tears that threaten to overwhelm me. Layla was a bright, beautiful young woman with her whole life ahead of her, but that life was cut short by a man who saw her as nothing more than an object to be used and discarded. I see heads nodding in the audience, faces etched with pain and understanding. But Layla's story is not unique. Every day, countless women and men are subjected to harassment, abuse, and discrimination in the workplace, and far too often their stories go untold and their suffering goes unacknowledged. I pause, letting my words sink in. But today, we say no more. Today, we stand together and we demand change. We demand a world where every person can go to work without fear of being harassed or abused, where every person is treated with dignity and respect. The crowd erupts in applause, and I feel a surge of energy coursing through me. The Lila Fraser Foundation is dedicated to making that world a reality. We will not rest until every workplace is safe and every person is free from abuse and harassment. I look out at the sea of faces, at the survivors and the allies and the advocates, and I feel a sense of hope and determination washing over me. Together, we can create a world where no one has to suffer in silence, where no one has to live in fear. Together, we can build a better future for all of us. As I step down from the podium, I'm surrounded by people who want to share their stories, who want to offer their support and their solidarity. And in that moment, I realize that this is what Lila's legacy will be. Not just the story of her tragedy, but the story of how we came together to create something beautiful out of the ashes of our grief. It's a long road ahead, and there will be challenges and setbacks along the way. But I know that with the support of this community, with the strength and the courage of the survivors and the allies and the advocates, we can do anything. And as I look up at the sky, at the stars twinkling in the distance, I feel Lila's presence all around me, guiding me forward, giving me the strength to keep going. I love you, baby girl, I whisper, my heart full of grief and love and hope. And I promise I will never stop fighting for you. Isn't marriage about time together, Hudson? Or does your new promotion mean our vows expire at midnight? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the growing unease in my stomach. Hudson glanced up from his laptop, his brow furrowed. Carice, you know it's just a busy period at work. This promotion is a big deal, and I need to prove myself. By neglecting your wife? I countered, feeling the sting of his absence more acutely with each passing day. We barely see each other anymore, and when we do, you're glued to that screen. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I'm sorry, honey. It won't be like this forever. Once I get through this initial phase, things will settle down. I promise. I wanted to believe him, but the nagging doubts persisted. Hudson had always been ambitious, but his recent detachment felt different, more pronounced. A part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something else was at play. All right, I conceded, forcing a small smile. But don't forget about us, okay? We're supposed to be a team. He reached out and squeezed my hand, his touch sending a familiar warmth through me. You're right. I'll make it up to you. I swear. As I gazed into his eyes, searching for the reassurance I craved, a flicker of uncertainty remained. Was I overthinking things, or was my husband slowly slipping away, consumed by forces beyond my comprehension? The next evening, I found myself at one of Hudson's company parties, surrounded by the usual suspects, colleagues, investors, and their respective partners. I plastered on a smile, making small talk while scanning the room for Hudson. That's when I overheard a hushed conversation between two women I recognized from previous events. Did you hear about Hudson's little rendezvous with Janine? Apparently, they've been getting cozy lately. My heart skipped a beat as the implications sank in. Janine was one of Hudson's direct reports, a young, ambitious woman always eager to please. You're kidding, the other woman gasped. But what about his wife? The first woman shrugged. I guess the thrill of the promotion was too much to resist. My world tilted on its axis as their words burrowed deep, fueling a suspicion I had desperately tried to ignore. Was Hudson really capable of such betrayal? In that moment, I knew I couldn't blindly trust his reassurances any longer. If there was truth to the rumors, I needed to uncover it, no matter how painful the revelations might be. After the party, I found myself unable to shake the uneasy feeling that had taken root. The rumor about Hudson's potential infidelity gnawed at me, breeding doubts that threatened to consume my every waking thought. I needed answers, but confronting Hudson directly could backfire spectacularly if my fears proved unfounded. No, I needed a more discreet approach, someone on the inside who could shed light on the situation without arousing suspicion. That's when I remembered Olivia, an old friend from college who had landed a job at the same tech firm a few years back. We hadn't spoken much lately, our lives having drifted apart, but perhaps she could provide the insight I so desperately craved. I sent her a casual text, suggesting we catch up over coffee, and to my relief, she eagerly agreed. A few days later, we found ourselves seated at a cozy cafe reminiscing about old times. "It's been too long," Olivia remarked, sipping her latte. "How have you been? How's Hudson?" I forced a smile, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I've been concerned lately." Olivia's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Taking a deep breath, I recounted the rumors I'd overheard at the party, my voice wavering ever so slightly. There were whispers about Hudson being involved with someone named Janine. "Do you know anything about that?" Olivia's eyes widened, and she glanced around furtively before leaning in closer. "Carice, I'm so sorry, but those rumors, they might have some truth to them." My heart sank as her words washed over me, confirming my worst fears. "What do you know?" I pressed, needing every detail, no matter how excruciating. "Janine and Hudson have been spending a lot of time together lately, working late nights and attending client meetings alone," Olivia explained, her voice laced with sympathy. "People have seen them getting a little too close for comfort, if you know what I mean." I nodded, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill forth. "And his promotion? Was any of that earned legitimately?" Olivia hesitated, her expression grave. "From what I've heard, he may have cut some corners, played a few underhanded games to get ahead, but I don't know all the details." In that moment, a wave of anger and betrayal washed over me, fueled by the realization that the man I had devoted myself to was capable of such deceit. Hudson had not only broken our sacred vows, but had also compromised his integrity for personal gain. "Thank you for being honest with me," I managed, my voice trembling. I need to process all this." Olivia reached across the table, squeezing my hand reassuringly. "I'm here for you, Carice. Whatever you decide to do, I've got your back." As I left the cafe, my mind whirled with a torrent of emotions: disbelief, rage, and a burning desire for retribution. Hudson had shattered the trust that formed the bedrock of our marriage, and for that, he would face consequences. I knew then that I couldn't simply confront him directly. He would undoubtedly deny everything and attempt to gaslight me. No, I needed a more strategic approach, what would expose his misdeeds beyond any doubt and bring his carefully constructed facade crumbling down around him. And I knew just the person who could help me orchestrate my revenge. After my conversation with Olivia, I found myself consumed by a burning desire for justice. Hudson's betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined, and the thought of him carrying on his deceitful ways filled me with a rage I had never known before. I needed a plan, a way to gather irrefutable evidence of his misdeeds and expose him for the fraud he truly was. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed an ally, someone who could help me navigate the treacherous waters ahead. That's when I reached out to my brother, Grant. We had always been close, and I knew I could trust him implicitly. When I explained the situation, his reaction was one of shock and fury. "That son of a bitch," Grant growled, his fists clenched. "How dare he do this to you, Carice? You don't deserve any of this." I nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. "I know, but I need your help to make things right. I can't let him get away with this." Grant's expression hardened, his eyes burning with determination. "Whatever you need, sis. I'm with you every step of the way." Over the next few weeks, Grant and I worked tirelessly, gathering evidence of Hudson's duplicity. Olivia provided us with insider information, helping us piece together the puzzle of his deceit. We uncovered incriminating emails, financial records, and even photographic evidence of Hudson's affair with Janine. The more we dug, the clearer it became that his promotion was built on a foundation of lies and underhanded tactics. "Look at this," Grant exclaimed one night, thrusting a stack of documents in my face. "He falsified expense reports, embezzled funds from the company. This guy is a criminal, Karis." I felt sick to my stomach as I pored over the damning evidence, but a part of me couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Finally, I had the ammunition I needed to bring Hudson's world crashing down around him. As the days passed, I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Anger and hurt warred with a lingering sense of love for the man I had once vowed to cherish. But his actions had shattered that bond, and I knew there was no turning back. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Grant asked one evening, his voice laced with concern. "This is going to get ugly, Karis? Are you prepared for the fallout?" I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. He made his choices, Grant, and now it's time for him to face the consequences. The plan was set in motion, and there was no turning back. Hudson had sown the seeds of his own destruction, and I was determined to reap the bitter harvest. A part of me still held out hope that he might come clean, that he might show some semblance of remorse and save what little was left of our fractured relationship. But deep down, I knew better. As I waited for the perfect moment to strike, to unleash the storm of retribution upon my unsuspecting husband, I couldn't help but wonder if a part of me had been irrevocably changed. The betrayal had left scars, hardening my heart and fueling a thirst for vengeance that terrified me. But there was no going back now. Hudson had made his choices, and it was time for him to face the consequences, no matter how ugly or painful they might be. With Grant's unwavering support and Olivia's insider knowledge, our mission to gather evidence against Hudson intensified. We were like detectives on a case, leaving no stone unturned in our quest to expose his web of lies. Grant had connections in the tech industry, and he leveraged them to gain access to confidential records and communications. Late nights were spent poring over financial statements, email threads, and surveillance footage, piecing together the intricate puzzle of Hudson's deception. "Look at this," Grant said one evening, his eyes fixed on the computer screen. "He's been siphoning funds from the company into offshore accounts for months." I felt a sickening twist in my gut as the realization sank in. Not only had Hudson betrayed our marriage vows, but he had also compromised his integrity and broken the law in pursuit of his ambitions. "That bastard," I muttered through gritted teeth. "He's going to pay for this, Grant. I swear it." Grant's expression hardened, his jaw set in determination. "We'll make sure of it, sis. He won't get away with this." As the days passed, the evidence mounted, painting a damning portrait of Hudson's misdeeds. Illicit affairs, financial fraud, insider trading. It seemed there was no line he wasn't willing to cross in his pursuit of power and success. And yet, despite the overwhelming proof of his wrongdoing, a part of me still held out a glimmer of hope that perhaps, deep down, there was some justification for his actions, some explanation that could somehow make sense of the chaos he had unleashed upon our lives. But every time I entertained that notion, the memories of his lies and betrayal came flooding back, extinguishing any lingering sympathy I might have harbored. "He's a monster, Karis," Grant said one night, his voice thick with disgust. "A selfish, lying monster who doesn't deserve a shred of your compassion." I knew he was right, but still, a part of me struggled with the weight of the decision that lay ahead. To expose Hudson's misdeeds would be to set in motion a series of events that could very well destroy him, professionally, financially, and perhaps even legally. Was I prepared to go that far? To unleash a storm of retribution that could potentially consume not only him, but also those caught in its wake? As I wrestled with these questions, Grant's voice cut through my thoughts. "Karis, look at me." I met his gaze, drawn in by the intensity in his eyes. "You didn't ask for any of this," he continued. "Hudson made his choices, and now he has to face the consequences. Don't let your compassion blind you to the reality of what he's done." His words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with a truth I had been grappling with for too long. Hudson had brought this upon himself, and it was time for me to stop making excuses for his inexcusable actions. With renewed determination, I nodded, steeling my resolve. "You're right, Grant. It's time to end this, once and for all." The planning continued, each piece of evidence meticulously catalogued and organized, building an ironclad case against the man I'd once loved. As the final pieces fell into place, I couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet satisfaction. Hudson had chosen his path, and now it was time for me to choose mine, a path that would lead to the reckoning he so richly deserved. With the weight of Hudson's betrayal bearing down on me, I knew the time had come to confront him directly. I had to give him one last chance to come clean, to acknowledge the depth of his deceit, and perhaps salvage what little remained of our shattered relationship. Grant was adamant that I should proceed with caution, fearing Hudson's potential for volatility when backed into a corner. But I was resolute in my decision. I needed to look into his eyes and see if there was even a flicker of remorse, a glimmer of the man I had once loved. I arranged for us to meet at a quiet cafe, a neutral ground where we could have a candid discussion away from prying eyes. As I sat waiting, my heart pounded in my chest, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within me. When Hudson finally arrived, his expression was one of confusion and mild annoyance. "What's this all about, Karis?" he asked, sliding into the booth across from me. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. "Hudson, we need to talk about what's been going on." He tensed, his body language defensive. "What do you mean?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder filled with the damning evidence we had gathered, emails, financial records, even photographs. "I know about the affairs, Hudson. I know about the fraud and the embezzlement." His eyes widened as he took in the stack of incriminating documents before him. For a moment he seemed caught off guard, but then his expression hardened, and a cruel smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth. "So, you've been doing a little digging, have you?" he sneered, his tone dripping with contempt. "Bravo, Karis. Bravo." I felt my blood boil at his dismissive attitude, but I forced myself to remain calm. "This is your chance to come clean, Hudson, to tell the truth, and maybe, just maybe, salvage what's left of our marriage." He let out a harsh laugh, his eyes cold and utterly devoid of remorse. "Come clean? Why the hell would I do that? I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let a little thing like you ruin everything I've built." His words cut like a knife, laying bare the depths of his selfishness and depravity. In that moment, I realized that the man I had loved was gone, consumed by his own twisted ambition and greed. "You're a monster," I spat, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "A lying, cheating monster who doesn't deserve a shred of loyalty or love." Hudson leaned back in his seat, a smug grin plastered across his face. "Call me what you want, Karis, but at the end of the day, I'm the one who's going to come out on top. You think your little stunt here is going to stop me? Think again." As he rose to leave, he fixed me with a cold, calculating stare. "You had your chance to play nice, but you blew it. Now you're going to find out just how far I'm willing to go to protect what's mine." With those chilling words, he turned and strode out of the cafe, leaving me shaken to my core. In that moment, I knew that any lingering hope of reconciliation was gone, replaced by a burning desire to see Hudson pay for his crimes. The gloves were off and the battle lines had been drawn. Hudson had made his choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. A choice that would either see me emerge victorious or be consumed by the fires of his wrath. As I sat there, clutching the damning evidence in my trembling hands, I realized that there was no turning back. The path ahead would be fraught with pain and retribution, but it was a journey I was prepared to undertake, no matter the cost. Hudson's downfall was inevitable, and I would be the one to orchestrate his demise, even if it meant sacrificing a part of my own soul in the process. After Hudson's defiant reaction and veiled threats, I knew there was no turning back. The time for diplomacy had passed, and the only path forward was to bring his misdeeds into the harsh light of day, exposing his carefully cultivated facade for the world to see. Grant and I meticulously planned our next move, scrutinizing every detail and anticipating every potential obstacle. We couldn't afford any missteps. This was our one chance to strike a decisive blow and ensure Hudson's downfall. The opportunity presented itself in the form of a major company event, a lavish gala attended by executives, investors, and industry bigwigs. It was the perfect stage for our grand unveiling, and we were determined to make it a spectacle Hudson would never forget. As the evening unfolded, I watched him work the room, charming and schmoozing his way through the crowd with practiced ease. It made my stomach churn to see him so effortlessly maintain his charade, all while the weight of his deceit threatened to crush him. When the time came for the speeches and presentations, I caught Grant's eye from across the room. He gave me a subtle nod, and I knew it was now or never. With my heart pounding in my chest, I made my way to the podium, clutching the folder containing the damning evidence against Hudson. The room fell silent as I took the stage, all eyes fixed upon me. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I'm sure many of you are wondering why I've interrupted this gala, but I assure you it's for a matter of grave importance." Hudson's face had drained of color, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and fear. I fixed him with a steely gaze, determined to hold his attention as I methodically laid out the details of his misdeeds. "For years, my husband Hudson has been engaged in a pattern of deceit and corruption," I declared, pulling out the first piece of evidence, a printout of an incriminating email exchange. "He has been carrying on multiple affairs, including one with his direct report, Janine." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as I continued, each revelation more damning than the last. Financial fraud, embezzlement, insider trading. No stone was left unturned as I methodically dismantled Hudson's carefully constructed facade. Throughout it all, Hudson remained frozen in place, his face contorted in a mask of rage and disbelief. When I finally fell silent, the room was engulfed in a deafening silence, punctuated only by the occasional gasp or whispered exclamation. Then Hudson found his voice. "You lying bitch," he snarled, his composure crumbling. "You think you can just waltz in here and ruin everything I've built? You're delusional." But his protestations fell on deaf ears as I produced the final piece of evidence, a damning video recording that captured his misdeeds in vivid detail. As the footage played out on the massive screens flanking the stage, Hudson's face drained of color, and he sank back into his chair, utterly defeated. In that moment, I knew I had won. Hudson's carefully constructed empire had come crashing down around him, his lies and betrayals laid bare for all to see. As security escorted him from the premises, his eyes met mine one final time, and I saw a flicker of something I hadn't expected: regret. But it was too little, too late. The damage had been done, and there was no turning back. In the aftermath of the explosive revelation, the fallout was swift and severe. Hudson was promptly fired, and legal proceedings were soon underway, threatening to strip him of everything he had so ruthlessly acquired. As for me, I felt a strange sense of catharsis, tempered by a lingering sadness for the man I had once loved. But ultimately, I knew I had done the right thing, not just for myself, but for all those he had wronged in his relentless pursuit of power and success. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe a little easier, secure in the knowledge that justice had been served. In the aftermath of Hudson's public downfall, the wheels of justice continued to turn with relentless momentum. With the evidence I had painstakingly gathered, the authorities wasted no time in building a case against him, leaving him little choice but to face the consequences of his actions. As the legal proceedings unfolded, I found myself embroiled in another battle, the battle for our shared assets and the life we had built together. Hudson, desperate to salvage what little he could, fought tooth and nail to maintain control, but I was determined not to let him walk away unscathed. "He's going to try and bury you in paperwork and legal jargon," Grant warned me one afternoon as we strategized our next move. "But we've got the upper hand here, Carys. Don't let him intimidate you." With Grant's guidance and the support of a formidable legal team, I navigated the treacherous waters of the divorce proceedings, steeling myself for the inevitable confrontations with Hudson. True to form, he resorted to every dirty trick in the book, attempting to gaslight and manipulate me at every turn. "Carys, please," he pleaded during one particularly heated exchange. "You know I never meant to hurt you. It was all just a misunderstanding. We can work through this." I fixed him with a withering glare, utterly unmoved by his hollow words. "Save your breath, Hudson. The only thing I want from you is a fair settlement. Nothing more, nothing less." His facade crumbled, and the true depths of his rage and bitterness were laid bare. "You think you've won, don't you?" he snarled, his eyes burning with hatred. "Well, you're wrong. I'll make sure you pay for this, one way or another." But his threats rang hollow, a desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control. With the weight of evidence stacked against him, Hudson had no choice but to accept the terms of the divorce, which stripped him of a significant portion of his ill-gotten wealth. As the final papers were signed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction wash over me. Hudson had been brought to his knees, his once towering ambitions reduced to rubble by his own hubris and deceit. In the weeks and months that followed, I turned my attention to rebuilding my life, surrounding myself with the unwavering support of Grant, Olivia, and those who had stood by me through the darkest of times. Hudson, on the other hand, found himself adrift, his professional and personal life in tatters. Whispers of his misdeeds spread like wildfire, making him a pariah in the very circles he had once coveted. On occasion he would reach out, his messages dripping with desperation and remorse. "Carice, please, you have to forgive me," he begged in one email. "I was a fool, and I've lost everything that matters. Give me one more chance, I'm begging you." But his pleas fell on deaf ears. The wounds he had inflicted ran too deep, and the man I had once loved was little more than a distant memory, eclipsed by the monster he had become. As I forged ahead, building a new life on my own terms, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. The betrayal, the pain, the burning desire for vengeance, it had all been a crucible, forging me into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. And while the scars of Hudson's deception would never fully heal, I took solace in the knowledge that I had emerged victorious, my integrity and self-worth intact. As for Hudson, he would forever be a cautionary tale, a reminder of the insidious nature of unchecked ambition and the consequences that awaited those who dared to cross the lines of loyalty and trust. In the end, the sweet taste of retribution was tempered by a lingering bitterness, but I knew that I had done what was necessary to reclaim my life and my dignity, and for that I had no regrets. With divorce finalized and Hudson's machinations laid bare, I found myself at a crossroads. The life I had once known was gone, replaced by the harsh realities of his betrayal and the aftermath of my quest for vengeance. But even in the midst of the turmoil, a part of me refused to be defined by Hudson's actions. I was determined to forge a new path, one that would allow me to not only heal, but also to help others who found themselves in similar situations. That's when the opportunity to work with a local nonprofit organization focused on empowering women presented itself. It was a chance to take my own experiences and channel them into something positive, a way to ensure that no one would have to endure the pain and heartbreak I had faced alone. "This is perfect for you, Carice," Grant enthused when I shared the news. "You've been through hell, but now you can use that to help others find their strength." With his unwavering support and the encouragement of my close friends, I dove headfirst into the work, pouring my heart and soul into advocating for those who had been wronged, betrayed, and cast aside. It wasn't easy, of course. There were days when the memories of Hudson's deceit would come flooding back, threatening to overwhelm me with a tidal wave of anger and sadness. But each time I felt myself slipping, I found strength in the stories of the women I worked with, their resilience, their determination to rise above the ashes of their own shattered dreams. Through it all, I couldn't help but wonder about Hudson's own journey. Where had his fall from grace taken him? Was he still clinging to the delusions of grandeur that had fueled his downward spiral, or had the weight of his actions finally broken through his arrogance? The answers came in sporadic bursts, whispers, and rumors that filtered through the grapevine. He had been forced to downsize, selling off his lavish possessions and moving into a modest apartment. Job prospects were scarce, his reputation forever tarnished by the scandal he had brought upon himself. A part of me felt a twinge of pity for the man I had once loved, but that fleeting emotion was quickly eclipsed by a sense of justice. Hudson was finally reaping the consequences he had sown, a bitter harvest of his own making. As for me, I found solace in the knowledge that I had emerged from the darkness stronger, more resilient, and with a renewed sense of purpose. The scars of Hudson's betrayal would never fully heal, but they had become a part of my narrative, a testament to the trials I had endured and overcome. And as I looked towards the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of optimism and hope. The road ahead would undoubtedly be paved with challenges, but I knew that I had the strength and the support system to navigate them, one step at a time. In the end, Hudson's legacy would be one of cautionary tale, a reminder of the insidious nature of unchecked ambition and the consequences that awaited those who dared to cross the lines of loyalty and trust. But my story, I hoped, would be one of resilience, of rising from the ashes of betrayal and forging a new path, one that would inspire and empower others to find their own strength in the face of adversity. And as I looked back on the journey that had brought me to this point, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, not just for the justice I had served, but for the person I had become in the process. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I was no longer a victim, but a survivor, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead with a newfound sense of purpose and resolve. The call comes just as I'm about to head out for my morning jog. Theo's voice on the other end of the line is calm, almost nonchalant, as if he's informing me about the weather. Lillian feels the empty nest at home. She's moving in next week. I nearly dropped my phone. Excuse me, when was this decided? Last night. Mom's been struggling since Dad passed, and I think it's best if she's with family. And you didn't think to discuss this with me first? I can feel my blood pressure rising. Marin, she's my mother. Where else is she supposed to go? That's not the point, Theo. We're supposed to be a team. You can't just make unilateral decisions like this. Look, it's just for a little while until she gets back on her feet. It won't be that bad. But I know better. I've seen how Theo gets around his mother, how he transforms from the man I married into a docile little boy, eager to please. I take a deep breath, trying to quell the panic rising in my chest. Fine, we'll talk about this when I get home. Great. Love you. I don't respond, just end the call and stare at my phone. This isn't the first time Theo has made a major decision without me, but it's definitely the most egregious. I think back to our wedding day, how Lillian had insisted on controlling every detail, from the guest list to the color of the napkins. I had chalked it up to typical mother-of-the-groom behavior, but now I see it for what it was, a sign of things to come. I start my jog, my feet pounding against the pavement as my mind races. How am I supposed to deal with Lillian living under my roof? The woman who constantly criticizes my cooking, my decorating choices, my career. I think about the inheritance my grandmother left me, the money I had been saving for a down payment on a house of our own. With Lillian moving in, that dream feels further away than ever. By the time I get back home, I'm drenched in sweat and no closer to a solution. Theo is already at work, so I'm left to my own devices as I try to figure out how to accommodate our new house guest. I start by clearing out the guest room, boxing up the exercise equipment and craft supplies that have accumulated over the years. As I'm doing so, I come across a photo album from our wedding. I flip through the pages, my eyes landing on a picture of Theo and Lillian dancing together, identical smiles on their faces. It hits me then, the realization that I will always be an outsider in my own marriage, that Theo will always put his mother's needs before my own. I close the album and shove it back into the box, my jaw clenched tight. Something has to change. I can't keep living like this, constantly playing second fiddle to a woman who doesn't even like me. I finish clearing out the room and head to the kitchen to start on dinner. As I chop vegetables, my mind churns with the beginnings of a plan. I may not be able to stop Lillian from moving in, but I'll be damned if I let her take over my life. The memories of our wedding day flood back as I sit at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but even then, the cracks were starting to show. I remember Lillian's disapproving frown as she surveyed the reception hall, her eyes lingering on the simple centerpieces I had chosen. "Are you sure this is what you want, dear? It's a bit quaint." I had forced a smile, determined not to let her ruin my big day. "It's perfect, Lillian, just what Theo and I wanted." But even as I said the words, I could feel Theo's hand tighten on my arm, a silent warning to play nice. Looking back, I can see how Theo's charming facade had blinded me to his true nature. The way he would dismiss my opinions with a laugh and a pat on the head, as if I were a child. The way he would always defer to his mother's wishes, no matter how unreasonable. I take a sip of my coffee, the bitter taste matching my mood. I had thought marriage would be a partnership, but instead I find myself playing the role of a subordinate, constantly bowing to the whims of my husband and his mother. The sound of the front door opening jolts me out of my thoughts. Theo strides into the kitchen, his suit impeccably pressed and his hair perfectly coiffed. He looks every inch the successful investment broker, but I know the truth behind the polished exterior. "How was your day, honey?" he asks, his tone dripping with false sincerity. "Fine," I reply, my voice clipped. "Just trying to figure out where to put all of Lillian's things." Theo's smile falters for a moment before he recovers. "I'm sure we'll find a place for everything. Mom's not bringing that much." I bite back a scoff. I've seen the moving trucks parked outside Lillian's house, the endless stream of boxes and furniture being loaded up. And where exactly are we supposed to put it all, Theo? This house isn't big enough for 3 people and a lifetime's worth of possessions. Theo's eyes narrow, his voice taking on an edge. "We'll make it work, Marin. Mom needs us right now." "And what about what I need?" I ask, my voice rising. "What about our plans for the future, the house we were going to buy?" Theo slams his hand down on the counter, making me jump. "Damn it, Marin. Can't you think of anyone but yourself for once? My mother just lost her husband. She needs her family." I stare at him, stunned by the outburst. In all our years together, I've never seen Theo lose his temper like this. "I am thinking of our family, Theo, but right now it feels like you're only thinking of yours." Theo takes a deep breath, his jaw clenched tight. "I don't have time for this. I have to go pick up Mom." He grabs his keys off the counter and storms out of the house, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sink back into my chair, my head in my hands. How did we get here? How did I let things get so out of control? But even as I ask myself the questions, I know the answer. I let Theo and Lillian steamroll over me, too afraid of rocking the boat to stand up for myself. Well, no more. I may not be able to stop Lillian from moving in, but I won't let her dictate my life. I won't let Theo treat me like a doormat any longer. I take a deep breath and stand up, my resolve hardening with each passing second. It's time to take back control of my life, one way or another. The next few days are a whirlwind of activity as I prepare for Lillian's arrival. I clean the house from top to bottom, rearrange furniture to make room for her belongings, and stock the fridge with all of her favorite foods. But no matter how much I do, it never seems to be enough. "This room is awfully small," Lillian sniffs as I show her the guest room, "and the decor is so bland." I bite my tongue, reminding myself that she's just lost her husband. "I thought we could go shopping for some new bedding and curtains, make it feel more like home." Lillian waves a dismissive hand. "I suppose that will have to do, for now." As the days go by, Lillian's presence in the house becomes increasingly suffocating. She criticizes everything from the way I load the dishwasher to the way I fold the towels. She rearranges my kitchen cabinets and moves my furniture without asking. But the final straw comes when I overhear her talking to Theo one evening. "Really, Theodore, I don't know how you stand it," she says, her voice dripping with disdain. "Living in this tiny house with a wife who can't even keep it properly decorated." I feel my blood boil as Theo's response floats down the hallway. "I know, Mom, but what can I do?" Marin is stubborn. "You need to put your foot down," Lillian insists. "Take control of the situation. You're the man of the house, after all." I can't listen to any more. I storm into the living room, my eyes blazing with anger. "How dare you?" I hiss at Lillian. "This is my home, and you have no right to come in here and start making demands." Lillian looks at me with a smirk. "Oh, please, this isn't a home. It's a shoebox, and you, my dear, are hardly qualified to be running it." I turn to Theo, expecting him to defend me, but he just stands there, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Theo?" I prompt, my voice shaking. "Are you going to let her talk to me like that?" Theo finally looks up, his expression unreadable. "Marin, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stare at him in disbelief. "Harder than it needs to be? Your mother just insulted me in my own home, and you're taking her side?" I'm not taking anyone's side, Theo argues. I just think we all need to calm down and find a way to make this work. I shake my head, hot tears stinging my eyes. I can't believe this. I can't believe you. I turn and flee the room, slamming the bedroom door behind me. I sink down onto the bed, my body shaking with sobs. How did I let things get this bad? How did I let Theo and Lillian walk all over me for so long? But even as I wallow in self-pity, a small voice in the back of my mind whispers that it's not too late, that I can still take back control of my life. I think of the inheritance my grandmother left me, the money I had been saving for our future. I think of how Theo had promised we would use it to buy a house of our own, start a family. But now, with Lillian living under our roof and Theo catering to her every whim, that future seems further away than ever. I wipe my eyes and take a deep breath, my resolve hardening. I won't let them take that away from me. I won't let them dictate how I live my life. I reach for my phone and dial a number I never thought I would need. Hello, I say when the receptionist answers. I need to speak with a lawyer. It's about my husband. The meeting with the lawyer is eye-opening, to say the least. I sit in his office, my hands clasped tightly in my lap as he looks over the documents I've brought with me. It seems your husband has been less than forthcoming about his financial situation, the lawyer says, his brow furrowed. Based on these bank statements, his investments are not nearly as lucrative as he's led you to believe. I feel a sinking sensation in the pit of my stomach. What do you mean? The lawyer sighs, leaning back in his chair. Mrs. Bridges, I believe your husband has been using your inheritance to fund his mother's lifestyle. The money he claims to be investing is actually being funneled into her accounts. I stare at him in shock, my mouth hanging open. That can't be true. Theo wouldn't do that to me. The lawyer gives me a sympathetic look. I'm afraid the evidence suggests otherwise. Your husband has been systematically draining your joint accounts for months. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. All this time, I thought Theo and I were working towards a common goal, a future together. But now I see that he's been lying to me, using me for my money. I think back to all the times he's dismissed my concerns about our finances, telling me not to worry, that he had everything under control. How could I have been so blind? I leave the lawyer's office in a daze, my mind reeling with the implications of what I've learned. When I get home, I find Theo and Lillian in the living room, sipping tea and chatting like old friends. Marin, there you are, Theo says, his voice all false cheer. I was just telling Mom about our plans for the weekend. I feel a surge of anger course through me. What plans, Theo? The ones where you take more of my money to fund your mother's shopping sprees? Theo's face goes white, his eyes widening in shock. What are you talking about? I throw the bank statements down on the coffee table. I'm talking about how you've been lying to me, stealing from me, using my inheritance to pay for your mother's extravagant lifestyle. Lillian scoffs, rolling her eyes. Don't be so dramatic, Marin. Theo is just being a good son, taking care of his family. I whirl on her, my eyes blazing. Taking care of his family? By stealing from his wife? By betraying my trust? Theo stands up, his hands held out in a placating gesture. Marin, please let me explain. But I'm done listening to his excuses. Explain what, Theo? How you've been using me all these years? How you never really loved me at all? Theo's face hardens, his voice growing cold. Don't be ridiculous. Of course I love you. But Lillian is my mother. I have to take care of her. I shake my head, tears streaming down my face. No, Theo, you have to take care of your wife. You have to be honest with me, respect me. But you've done none of those things. I turn to leave, but Theo grabs my arm. Marin, wait, we can work this out. I yank my arm away, my voice trembling with rage. No, we can't. Not anymore. I won't be your doormat any longer. I won't let you and your mother control my life. I storm out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I know what I have to do now. I have to take back control of my life, my future. And I know just where to start. The next morning, I'm back in the lawyer's office, a plan forming in my mind. I've spent the night tossing and turning, my anger and hurt fueling my determination to make Theo and Lillian pay for what they've done. I want to file for divorce, I tell the lawyer, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. And I want to make sure Theo can't touch a penny of my inheritance. The lawyer nods, his expression serious. Based on what you've told me, We have grounds for a strong case. Theo's financial infidelity is a clear violation of your prenuptial agreement. I feel a flicker of hope at his words. When Theo and I got married, I insisted on a prenup to protect my inheritance. At the time, he had laughed it off, telling me we would never need it. Now, I'm grateful for my foresight. What about Lillian? I ask, my jaw clenching at the thought of my mother-in-law. Can we prove she was involved in the fraud? The lawyer hesitates for a moment before answering. It may be more difficult to implicate her directly, but we can certainly make a case for her being a beneficiary of Theo's actions. If we can show that she knew about the misappropriation of funds and did nothing to stop it, we may be able to hold her accountable as well. I nod, my mind racing with possibilities. I want to make sure she doesn't get a dime of my money. She's been living off of me for too long. We'll do everything we can to ensure that doesn't happen, the lawyer assures me. In the meantime, I recommend you start gathering any evidence you can find of Theo's financial misdeeds. Bank statements, receipts, anything that shows a pattern of misconduct. I leave the office with a newfound sense of purpose, my steps lighter than they've been in months. When I get home, I find Theo in the kitchen, his face drawn and haggard. "Where have you been?" he asks, his voice tight with accusation. "I've been calling you all morning." I shrug, my expression cool and composed. "I had some errands to run, not that it's any of your business." Theo's eyes narrow, his mouth twisting into a sneer. "Everything you do is my business, Marin. You're my wife." I laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. "Your wife? Is that what you call someone you lie to and steal from?" Theo takes a step towards me, his fists clenched at his sides. "I did what I had to do to take care of my family. My mother needed help, and I provided it. With my money," I spit back. "Without my knowledge or consent. That's not taking care of your family, Theo. That's betrayal." Theo's face reddens, his voice rising to a shout. "You're one to talk about betrayal. Running off to see a lawyer behind my back, plotting against me." "Plotting against you?" I echo, my own voice rising to match his. "You're the one who's been plotting, Theo. Plotting to use me, to drain me dry. Well, guess what? The jig is up. I know everything, and I'm not going to take it anymore." Theo takes a step back, his expression wary. "What are you saying, Marin?" I take a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm saying I want a divorce, Theo. I want you and your mother out of my life for good." Theo stares at me, his mouth hanging open in shock. "You can't be serious." I meet his gaze, my eyes hard and unyielding. "Oh, I'm serious, Theo. Dead serious, and I'm just getting started." The next few weeks are a blur of legal proceedings and emotional upheaval. Theo tries to contest the divorce, but the evidence against him is overwhelming. The bank statements, the receipts, the email trails, all of it paints a clear picture of his deceit and betrayal. Lillian, of course, takes Theo's side, painting me as a vindictive shrew out to destroy her precious son. She even has the audacity to show up at my office, demanding to speak with me. "How dare you do this to my boy?" she hisses, her eyes narrowed in fury. "After everything he's done for you, this is how you repay him?" I stare at her in disbelief, my anger rising to a boil. "Everything he's done for me? You mean like stealing my money and lying to my face? Like using me as his own personal ATM?" Lillian scoffs, waving a dismissive hand. "Oh, please. Theo was just taking care of his family like a good son should. If you were any kind of wife, you would understand that." I take a deep breath, trying to calm the rage swirling inside me. "Lillian, I am a good wife, but I'm not a doormat. I won't stand by and let you and Theo walk all over me anymore." Lillian's face twists into an ugly sneer. "You think you're so high and mighty, don't you? With your fancy job and your big inheritance. Well, let me tell you something, Missy. You're nothing without Theo. Nothing." I feel a cold smile spread across my face. "That's where you're wrong, Lillian. I'm everything without Theo, and I'm going to make sure the whole world knows it." Lillian's eyes widen in surprise, but before she can respond, I turn on my heel and walk away, my head held high. That evening, I sit down with the lawyer and make a plan. I've spent years keeping quiet about Theo's misdeeds, protecting his reputation for the sake of our marriage, but now I have no reason to hold back. "I want to expose him," I tell the lawyer, my voice trembling with emotion. "I want everyone to know what kind of man he really is." The lawyer nods, his expression grim. We can leak the evidence to the press, to his colleagues, to anyone who will listen. But Marin, I have to warn you, this could get ugly. Theo and Lillian won't go down without a fight. I take a deep breath, my resolve hardening. I know, but I'm ready for a fight. I'm done being a victim. The next day, the story breaks in the news. Investment broker accused of fraud. The headlines scream. Wife exposes years of financial abuse. The response is immediate and explosive. Theo's colleagues desert him in droves, his clients pulling their accounts and demanding answers. Even his own firm throws him under the bus, issuing a statement condemning his actions and distancing themselves from the scandal. Lillian, of course, is beside herself with rage. She shows up at my door, her face twisted in fury. "You vindictive bitch," she screams, her voice shrill and hysterical. "How could you do this to us? To your own family?" I stare at her, my expression cold and unyielding. "You stopped being my family the moment you betrayed me, Lillian, the moment you put your own selfish desires above my well-being." Lillian's face crumples, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please, Marin, don't do this. We can work it out. We can find a way to fix this." I shake my head, my voice steady and calm. "There is no fixing this, Lillian. You and Theo made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." I close the door in her face, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I know the road ahead won't be easy, but for the first time in years I feel free. Free from Theo's lies, free from Lillian's manipulations, free to finally live my life on my own terms. The fallout from the scandal is swift and merciless. Theo loses his job, his clients, his reputation. Overnight, he goes from a successful investment broker to a pariah, shunned by everyone who once admired him. Lillian, too, feels the sting of public disgrace. Her social circle turns their backs on her, canceling invitations and whispering behind her back. She becomes a ghost in her own community, a cautionary tale of what happens when you cross the wrong person. I watch it all unfold with a grim sense of satisfaction. After years of being under Theo and Lillian's thumb, it feels good to finally be the one in control. But even as I savor my victory, I know that my work is not yet done. I arrange a meeting with Lillian, determined to have one final confrontation. She arrives at the coffee shop looking haggard and worn, her once perfect hair and makeup now disheveled and unkempt. "What do you want, Marin?" she asks, her voice flat and defeated. "Haven't you done enough already?" I lean back in my chair, my expression calm and composed. "I just wanted to make sure you understand the full extent of what you and Theo have done, the lives you've ruined, the trust you've betrayed." Lillian's eyes flash with anger. "You act like you're so innocent in all of this, like you didn't benefit from Theo's success just as much as we did." I nod, acknowledging the truth in her words. "You're right, Lillian. I did benefit from Theo's success, but I never knew the true cost of that success. The lies, the deceit, the betrayal." Lillian looks away, her jaw clenching tight. "We did what we had to do to survive, to maintain our lifestyle." I lean forward, my voice low, and intense. "But at what cost, Lillian? Your integrity, your self-respect, your relationship with your son?" Lillian's eyes fill with tears, her lower lip trembling. "Theo will never forgive me for this, for letting him down." I feel a flicker of sympathy for her, but I push it aside. "That's not my problem, Lillian. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." I stand up to leave, but Lillian grabs my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. "Please, Marin, don't do this. Don't destroy us completely." I wrench my arm away, my voice cold and unyielding. "You destroyed yourselves, Lillian. I just shone a light on the truth." I walk away, my head held high. I know that my journey is not yet over, that there will be more obstacles and challenges to come. But for now, I feel a sense of peace and closure, knowing that I have taken back control of my life. The divorce is finalized a few months later, and I walk out of the courthouse a free woman. Theo and Lillian are left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, their once enviable lifestyle, now nothing more than a distant memory. As for me, I focus on rebuilding my own life. I throw myself into my work, determined to succeed on my own terms. I surround myself with friends and family who love and support me, who appreciate me for who I am, not what I can do for them. And slowly but surely, I begin to heal. The pain and anger that once consumed me start to fade, replaced by a newfound sense of strength and resilience. I know that I will never forget what Theo and Lillian did to me, but I also know that I will not let it define me. I am more than just a victim of their lies and betrayal. I am a survivor, a fighter, a woman who knows her own worth and will never again settle for less than she deserves. And that, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all. Life after the divorce is a strange and unfamiliar landscape. For so long, my identity was tied up in being Theo's wife, in playing the role of the dutiful spouse and daughter-in-law. Now I find myself adrift, unsure of who I am or what I want. But even as I struggle to find my footing, I take solace in the fact that Theo and Lillian are struggling even more. Everywhere they go, they are met with whispers and stares, with people who once fawned over them, now turning their backs in disgust. I hear through the grapevine that Theo has been blacklisted from every major investment firm in the city, his once sterling reputation now forever tarnished. Lillian, too, has become a social pariah, shunned by the very people she once looked down upon. Part of me feels a twisted sense of satisfaction at their downfall. After all the pain and betrayal they put me through, it feels like justice to see them finally facing the consequences of their actions. But another part of me knows that revenge is a hollow victory. It may feel good in the moment, but it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the years of lies and deceit, the trust that was so brutally shattered. And so I focus on moving forward. I throw myself into my work, taking on new projects and challenges that push me out of my comfort zone. I start seeing a therapist, working through the trauma and pain of my failed marriage. Slowly but surely I begin to rebuild my life. I make new friends, people who value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. I take up new hobbies, exploring parts of myself that I never had the chance to before, and as I do, I start to realize that my marriage to Theo was not the end of my story. It was just one chapter, a painful and difficult one, but one that I survived. And now, I have the chance to write a new chapter, one filled with hope and possibility. One day, I run into Lillian at the grocery store. She looks older than I remember, her face lined with worry and regret. For a moment, we just stare at each other, unsure of what to say. Finally, Lillian breaks the silence. "Marin, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. What Theo and I did to you was unforgivable." I nod, my expression guarded. "You're right, Lillian. It was unforgivable." Lillian takes a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. "I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that." I feel a flicker of something in my chest. Not quite forgiveness, but perhaps a glimmer of understanding. "Thank you, Lillian. I appreciate you saying that." We stand there for a moment longer, two women whose lives were once so intertwined, now nothing more than strangers. And then, without another word, we go our separate ways. As I walk out of the store, I feel a sense of lightness, as if a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. I know that I will never forget what Theo and Lillian did to me, but I also know that I no longer need to carry the burden of their betrayal. I am not the same woman I was when I married Theo, and I never will be again. But that's okay, because the woman I am now is stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I ever thought possible. I am rebuilding not just my life, but my very soul, and with each passing day, I am one step closer to the person I was always meant to be. It's not an easy journey, but it's one that I am finally ready to take. And as I walk out into the bright sunlight, I feel a sense of hope and possibility that I haven't felt in years. The future is wide open, and for the first time in a long time, I am excited to see where it will take me. During a sun-drenched afternoon, the aroma of sizzling burgers filled the backyard as our family gathered for a casual barbecue. I watched as my brother Miles doted on his fiancée, Cora, serving her a plate of food with a besotted grin. Although beautiful and charming on the surface, something about Cora's calculating gaze unsettled me. "So, Lena," Cora said, her perfectly manicured fingers toying with the stem of her wineglass, "Miles mentioned you're a tutor at the community college." I tensed, sensing the subtle condescension in her tone. "Yes, I find it incredibly rewarding to help students unlock their full potential." Cora's scarlet lips curved into a patronizing smile. "How quaint. I can't imagine settling for such a modest career, but I suppose not everyone has ambition." My jaw clenched as Miles shot me an apologetic glance, oblivious to the true extent of Cora's disdain. I forced a polite smile, determined not to cause a scene at our family gathering. Later, as I helped Mom clear the dishes, she leaned in close. "Cora seems a bit intense, doesn't she?" I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. "I'm just worried Miles might be rushing into this. They've only been together for a few months." Mom's brow furrowed with concern. "You don't think she's after our family's money, do you?" Before I could respond, Miles strode into the kitchen, his arm draped possessively around Cora's waist. "There are my two favorite ladies. What are you whispering about?" Cora flashed her dazzling smile, but I noticed the calculation behind her eyes. "Oh, just girl talk." As the evening wound down, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Cora's true motives extended far beyond love and commitment. Her snide remarks hinted at a deep disdain for anyone or anything she deemed beneath her. And for some reason, I feared my brother had become her latest target. In the weeks following the barbecue, my unease around Cora only intensified. I noticed peculiar charges appearing on the family business accounts. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, even a deposit for a lavish destination wedding venue. When I questioned Miles about it, he brushed it off, insisting Cora was just getting settled into her new role managing our finances. "She's brilliant with numbers, Lena," he said dreamily. "I've never felt more confident leaving that side of things to someone else." I wanted to believe him, but something didn't add up. How could this near stranger have earned such blind trust so quickly? One evening, I stopped by Miles' apartment unannounced, hoping to catch Cora off guard. She opened the door, her perfectly coiffed hair and immaculate makeup striking for that late hour. "Lena, what a surprise," she purred, not bothering to hide her disdain. "Miles isn't home from the office yet. Actually, I wanted to talk to you." I pushed past her into the living room, unfazed by her narrowed eyes. "I've noticed some irregular expenses on the business accounts you're managing." Cora's expression remained infuriatingly calm. "Oh? Like what?" I listed off the suspicious charges: designer clothes, lavish vacations, even personal care services that seemed wildly excessive. "Care to explain what our family's hard-earned money is being spent on?" For a moment her mask slipped, revealing a flash of anger. But just as quickly, the placid smile returned. "Lena, darling, you worry too much. Can't a woman treat herself occasionally?" She trailed a finger along my arm, her voice taking on a sickly sweet tone. "Why don't you find yourself a nice man and leave the business matters to me?" I jerked away from her touch, repulsed. "I don't trust you, Cora, and I won't stop until I expose whatever game you're playing." Her smile turned frigid. "You'd be wise to mind your own business. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen to your beloved community college, now would you?" The thinly veiled threat hung in the air as I stormed out, more convinced than ever that Cora's intentions were sinister. If Miles refused to see the truth, I'd have to take matters into my own hands, for the sake of our family. After my confrontation with Cora, I knew I needed to dig deeper into her background. Miles was too blinded by love to see the truth, so it was up to me to expose her for who she really was before it was too late. I spent sleepless nights scouring the internet, searching for any clues about Cora's past relationships or financial dealings. What I uncovered was a trail of wealthy men she had dated briefly before unexpectedly cutting ties and moving on to her next target. Posing as a prospective client, I even contacted a few of Cora's former romantic interests. The stories they told painted a disturbing picture, one of manipulation, deceit, and a ruthless pursuit of money and status. "She love-bombed me at first," one man confided over the phone, his voice laced with bitterness. "Showered me with attention, made me feel like the luckiest guy in the world, but as soon as I signed over power of attorney, she drained my accounts and disappeared." Another disclosed how Cora had pressured him into an accelerated wedding timeline, only to call it off at the last minute and walk away with the non-refundable deposits. With each new revelation, my determination to stop Cora grew stronger. She was clearly a master of deception, and Miles was headed down the same tragic path as her previous victims if I didn't intervene. Meanwhile, Cora's schemes showed no signs of slowing down. She insisted on hosting an over-the-top engagement party, under the guise of celebrating their love, but likely as another opportunity to flaunt her illicit wealth. "We simply must have it at the Grand Pavilion Ballroom." She gushed to Miles one evening when I stopped by unannounced. "It's the most exclusive venue in town." Miles beamed, utterly captivated. "Of course, my love, whatever you desire." She caught my skeptical gaze and smirked. "Lena, you're welcome to come as well, if you can find something suitable to wear from the community college's bargain bin." I bit back the urge to slap that smug grin off her face, reminding myself that confrontation would only cause Miles to further retreat into her web of lies. As I left, Cora's parting words cut like a knife. "I'd watch your back if I were you. You never know when something might slip through the cracks." Her vague threats only strengthened my resolve. If Cora thought she could bully me into submission, she was sorely mistaken. This was war, and I wouldn't rest until I reclaimed my brother from her toxic clutches. As the days ticked down to the engagement party, Cora's manipulation tactics intensified. She paid a visit to my parents, batting her long lashes as she spun an elaborate tale about investing in a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity that required a hefty cash infusion. "It would secure all of our futures," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity, "but we'll need your financial support to make it happen." My heart sank as I watched my normally sharp-witted parents get ensnared in Cora's deceitful web. Dad nodded enthusiastically, smitten by her charm offensive, while Mom wrung her hands with concern. "I'm not sure we have that kind of money readily available," she fretted. Cora's smile remained plastered on, but her eyes flashed with impatience. "Surely you could liquidate some assets or take out a loan against the family business? Miles and I would pay you back tenfold once this deal goes through." Before they could respond, I burst into the living room, unable to stay silent any longer. "Don't do it. She's lying to you, to all of us." Cora whirled toward me, her expression contorting into a venomous glare. "How dare you barge in here and make such accusations?" "Because it's the truth." I shot back, my voice rising with pent-up frustration. "I know all about your history of scamming wealthy men, Cora. You're nothing but a con artist." For the first time, real panic flickered across her features as she struggled to regain her composure. "She's delusional," Cora sputtered, turning to my stunned parents. "Lena's just bitter and jealous that her own life lacks purpose or direction." My fists clenched at my sides as Mom gaped at us, utterly bewildered. Dad's expression hardened as he considered Cora's deceptively innocent demeanor. "Is this true, Lena?" he asked gruffly. "Because if you're making outlandish claims with no proof, that's a line I won't tolerate." I took a deep, steadying breath. "I have proof. Lots of it." Reaching into my bag, I pulled out the dossier I'd compiled. Bank statements, testimonies from Cora's former flames, even a nugget about a prior arrest for financial fraud that had been expunged. Cora paled as I slammed the stack of papers on the coffee table with a thud. Her green eyes, so adept at feigning warmth, now blazed with undisguised hatred. "You'll regret this," she hissed through gritted teeth. I leveled her with an icy glare. "No, Cora. You're the one who's going to regret ever messing with my family." With that vow lingering in the tense silence, I turned on my heel and stormed out, my mind already formulating a plan to put a stop to Cora's twisted games once and for all. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Cora, I wasted no time coordinating my next move. I knew her vindictive nature meant she would likely retaliate, so I had to strike first and decisively. I gathered a small group of trusted relatives, my Uncle Jack, Cousin Emma, and Miles's childhood best friend, Alex. After swearing them to secrecy, I laid out the incriminating evidence I'd compiled on Cora. "This woman is out to bleed our family dry," I declared, sliding copies of the dossier across the table. "We need to expose her lies at the engagement party before she has a chance to make her next play." Uncle Jack stroked his graying beard, eyes narrowed in contemplation. "I always had a bad feeling about that one. Count me in." Emma and Alex exchanged a loaded glance before nodding in solemn agreement. With my covert team assembled, we began mapping out an airtight plan of attack. Meanwhile, Cora continued flaunting her false persona, leveraging Miles's family connections to further her own agenda. I cringed as she sidled up to unsuspecting relatives at a lunch gathering, batting her lashes and spinning grandiose tales about her supposed business ventures. "We're diversifying into high-end real estate development," she gushed, clinging to Miles' arm with an adoring smile. "It's such an exciting opportunity." Miles beamed, utterly enthralled as the others offered congratulations and well wishes. Only my dad regarded Cora with a measure of skepticism after my damning revelations. As the party drew nearer, tensions mounted. Cora caught me leaving the house one afternoon, her eyes glittering with unveiled malice. "I know what you're up to," she hissed, strutting toward me with fists clenched. "You and your pathetic little crew can try to take me down, but I'll bury you all." I refused to flinch, squaring my shoulders as I met her venomous glare. "I'm not afraid of you, Cora. It's over." A cruel smile curved her painted lips. "We'll see about that." The night before the party, my phone pinged with an ominous text from an unknown number. "Give it up, or you'll lose everything." Attached was a photo of the community college where I taught, the implication clear. I shuddered, but my resolve didn't waver. Cora had upped the stakes, but she had no idea what I was capable of to protect my family. Tomorrow would be her ultimate reckoning. The Grand Pavilion ballroom glistened with opulence, the crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the lavish floral arrangements and white linen tables. But beneath the glamorous facade, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the air. Cora swept into the venue on Miles's arm, resplendent in a slinky emerald gown that left little to the imagination. Her smug smile faltered infinitesimally when she spotted our covert team stationed at strategic points around the room. "Tonight will be a night to remember," she purred into Miles's ear, tightening her grip on his bicep. "Just wait until you hear the announcement I have planned." As guests mingled and fawned over the extravagant affair, I caught Emma's eye and gave an imperceptible nod. It was time to spring our trap. The first subtle strike came as Uncle Jack engaged Cora in conversation, steering her toward a quiet corner with a few polite compliments. "Your dress is exquisite," he remarked, his grandfatherly demeanor utterly disarming. "It must have cost a small fortune, just like this entire party, I'd wager." Cora preened under the faux praise. "Why, thank you, Jack. Miles and I spare no expense when it comes to the finer things." Of course. Although I must admit, I was surprised when Lena told me about your unconventional business dealings." He tsked softly, watching her face contort with the first flicker of unease. "Fraud, extortion, swindling wealthy bachelors out of their fortunes. It's all a bit unsavory, wouldn't you agree?" Cora's mouth dropped open, but before she could respond, Emma sidled up with a conspiratorial grin. "Oh, Aunt Cora, you simply must meet my friend Claire," she chirped, gesturing toward the sour-faced woman at her side. "She's dying to share her experience dating you a few years back." As Claire launched into a diatribe about the thousands Cora had conned out of her, I watched the blood drain from cunning schemer's face. Nearby, Alex began questioning Miles about the astronomical party costs, while casually mentioning his concerns over Cora's misuse of funds. Within minutes, a hush fell over the ballroom as Cora's panicked gaze flickered between the damning witnesses closing in from every angle. "Miles, honey, you have to believe me," she began, her voice wavering. But it was my turn to strike the final blow. I stepped forward, folders of irrefutable proof clutched in my hands. "Everyone, I'm afraid there's been a terrible mistake," I announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This party is a sham, a ruse intended to distract us all from the truth about Cora's despicable intentions." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Cora paled, frozen in the spotlight of scrutiny. "I have evidence," I declared, fanning out the incriminating documents with a flourish. Bank statements, legal records, testimonials, all laying out Cora's long history of defrauding and manipulating people for her own nefarious gain. Our relatives rallied behind me, bolstering my words with a chorus of condemnation aimed at the now exposed charlatan. Cora's mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish, her facade of confidence utterly shattered. In that moment, it was evident that her reign of terror had finally, deservedly, come to an ignominious end. As the weight of the evidence crushed down on her, Cora's composure rapidly unraveled. Her perfectly coiffed demeanor disintegrated into a frantic, wide-eyed panic. "Miles, darling, you can't possibly believe these ridiculous lies," she cried, grasping his arm with claw-like desperation. "It's all a big misunderstanding." But the hurt and betrayal etched on Miles's face spoke volumes. Slowly, reluctantly, the veil of infatuation lifted, as he absorbed the damning testimonies and paper trail detailing Cora's web of deceit. "How could you?" he rasped, anguish lacing his words as he wrenched free of her grip. You used me, my family, for your own selfish gain? Cora opened her mouth, but no coherent defense emerged, only a strangled whimper as the stark reality crashed down upon her. She was finished, exposed for the callous con artist she truly was. As the stunned silence stretched on, Dad stepped forward, his expression grave. I think it's time you left, Miss Jennings, and I'd advise against any further contact with my family. The use of her full name seemed to jolt Cora from her stupor. With a last desperate pivot, she swept a hand through her perfectly coiffed tresses and attempted a tremulous pout. Please, I never meant for things to go this far, she simpered, sickly sweet. I fell so deeply in love with Miles that I lost my way for a bit, but I'm willing to make amends, do anything to prove my devotion. Miles recoiled as if struck, his jaw tightening with righteous indignation. Save it. I don't want to hear another word from you. His cold dismissal seemed to finally pierce Cora's delusional armor. Her attempts at manipulation collapsed entirely as bitter fury contorted her delicate features into an ugly sneer. You'll regret this, she spat in my direction, green eyes blazing with visceral hatred. All of you. But her vitriolic threats rang hollow against the wall of familial solidarity that had rallied against her depravity. We stood united, an impenetrable front that her malice could never breach. With a last contemptuous glare, Cora gathered the tattered shreds of her dignity and stormed out, the click of her designer heels fading into blessed silence. Gradually, the tension in the room dissipated as the truth of Cora's treachery sank in. Miles remained still as a statue, absorbing the emotional fallout, until Mom enveloped him in a comforting embrace. It's going to be all right, sweetie, she murmured, stroking his hair with maternal tenderness. We're here for you. Tears glistened in his eyes as he clung to her, finally allowing the anguish to flood forth. But even in his heartbreak, a glimmer of hope shone through. The knowledge that he had us, his stalwart family, to help guide him through the wreckage. As I watched my brother's agonizing journey towards healing begin, I felt a profound sense of relief. The nightmare was over, and justice had prevailed through the strength of our unbreakable bonds. 6 months later, the dark cloud of Cora's duplicity had fully lifted from our family. The business was thriving once again under Miles and my joint leadership, and the strained bonds that her twisted schemes had frayed were healing steadily. I smiled as I watched Miles pore over financial reports at his desk, a crease of concentration furrowing his brow. Gone was the love-struck naivete that had blinded him to Cora's true nature. In its place was a wiser, more grounded man who had learned the value of vigilance the hard way. Lena, can you come take a look at these projections for next quarter? He called out, glancing up with a warm smile. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. As I rounded the desk to stand at his side, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride at how far he'd come. In the aftermath of Cora's exposure, Miles had thrown himself wholeheartedly into restoring the family business, determined to atone for the mistakes and vulnerabilities that had nearly spelled our ruin. Everything looks solid to me, I assured him, scanning the spreadsheet with a practiced eye. Though I think we could afford to be a bit more aggressive with the marketing budget for that new product line. Miles nodded thoughtfully, jotting down a note. You're probably right. I trust your instincts. The easy camaraderie and mutual respect between us was a far cry from the strained tensions of months past. Cora's deception had shaken Miles to his core, but rather than retreat inward, he had emerged more committed than ever to upholding the values of honesty and integrity that were the bedrock of our family legacy. Over dinner that evening, conversation flowed as freely as the wine, our raucous laughter filling the air in a way it hadn't for far too long. Remember when Cora tried to pass off that ratty old fur as a vintage Revlon? Emma cackled, nearly spilling her drink as she dissolved into a fresh gale of mirth. An impish grin tugged at Miles' lips as he shook his head ruefully. God, I can't believe how thoroughly she had me fooled. I'm just grateful you all saw through her act before it was too late. Mom reached across the table to give his hand a tender squeeze. What matters is that you opened your eyes in the end, honey. We're just glad to have you back. As the night wound down and our boisterous clan gradually dispersed, I found myself alone on the back patio, gazing up at the twinkling canopy of stars. So much had changed, and yet in many ways we had emerged stronger, a family united by the indestructible bonds of loyalty and truth. In that tranquil moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and resolution wash over me. We had weathered Cora's storm of malice and emerged battle-tested but whole. And though the scars might never fully fade, our perseverance and love for one another would forever be the blazing beacon to guide us through any darkness that dared encroach on our lives again. I stared at the innocuous brown package on my kitchen counter, feeling a sinking sensation in my gut. Another one. The third this week, all containing random items I never ordered or wanted. A set of cheap steak knives, a floral silk scarf, and now a garish ceramic vase. My heartbeat quickened as I scanned the plain wrapping for any clues, but just like the others, there was no return address or identifying information. "What's going on?" I muttered under my breath, running a hand through my graying hair. A strange, gnawing feeling told me this was no mere mix-up at the mail depot. The sound of the doorbell jolted me from my thoughts. I peered through the peephole to see the familiar face of my niece, Cora, smiling back at me. A wave of relief washed over me as I ushered her inside. "Aunt Sage, you look spooked," Cora remarked, her brow furrowed with concern. "What's wrong?" Without hesitation, I recounted the bizarre series of mystery packages, laying out the contents on the kitchen island. Cora's eyes widened as she examined each item, her fingers tracing over the intricate patterns on the vase. "This is really weird," she murmured. "Have you tried calling the companies or tracking the shipments?" I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "That's the thing. There are no order numbers, no invoices, nothing. It's like these packages just materialized out of thin air." Cora's expression hardened, her jaw set in determination. "We need to get to the bottom of this. Maybe we should install some security cameras around the house, just in case." Her suggestion ignited a spark of unease within me. Could someone be targeting me? But who and why? Flashes of old family tensions flickered through my mind, but I quickly brushed them aside. Surely it couldn't be related to those ancient grudges. "You're right," I finally agreed, steeling my resolve. "Let's get those cameras set up. If someone is behind this, we'll catch them red-handed." As we worked together to mount the cameras, a sense of unease lingered. But deep down, I knew I had to unravel this mystery, no matter where it led. After all, I was Sage Allen, retired teacher, community leader, and no stranger to facing challenges head-on. Whatever storm was brewing, I would weather it with the same resilience that had carried me through life's ups and downs. Over the next few days, Cora and I meticulously installed the security cameras, positioning them to cover every potential entry point around my modest home. The uneasy knot in my stomach refused to dissipate, and Cora's presence provided little comfort as we pored over the footage, searching for any suspicious activity. That's when we saw him, a figure lurking in the shadows, his face partially obscured by the darkness. But there was no mistaking that familiar gait, the slight hunch of his shoulders that I'd recognize anywhere. "Frederick," I breathed, my fingers tightening around the computer mouse as if it were a lifeline. Cora's eyes widened. "You mean your cousin? The one who's been in and out of trouble ever since we were kids?" I nodded grimly, memories of Frederick's past misdeeds flooding back. Petty theft, fraud, even a stint in jail. He'd always been a black sheep in our family, constantly seeking shortcuts and exploiting loopholes for his own gain. But why now? I wondered aloud. What could he possibly want from me after all these years? Cora's brow furrowed as she zoomed in on the grainy footage, studying Frederick's furtive movements. "Well, whatever it is, it can't be good. We need to be careful, Aunt Sage." A shiver ran down my spine at the stern tone in her voice. Cora had always been level-headed, but there was a newfound severity in her demeanor that unsettled me. Over the next few days, the packages kept arriving, each more bizarre and unsettling than the last. A set of expensive crystal wine glasses, a designer handbag still wrapped in plastic, even a sleek laptop that must have cost a small fortune. With each delivery, my unease grew, and I found myself jumping at every creak and shadow. It was during one of our nightly stakeouts that Cora made a startling discovery. "Look at this," she said, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she pulled up a news article from a neighboring town. There have been reports of similar incidents, people receiving random high-value packages they never ordered. My heart sank as I scanned the article, recognizing the all-too-familiar pattern. "You don't think." Cora's expression was grim. "Frederick's name is all over this. It looks like he's been running some sort of twisted scam, sending people valuable goods, and then trying to extort money from them." Rage bubbled within me, hot and visceral. How dare he drag our family name through the mud once again with his selfish, criminal antics? But beneath the anger, a sliver of fear took root. If Frederick was truly behind this, what lengths would he go to in his pursuit of ill-gotten gains? "We need to stop him," I declared, my voice trembling with resolve. "Whatever it takes, we can't let him get away with this." Cora nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Don't worry, Aunt Sage. We'll bring that scumbag down, even if we have to catch him in the act ourselves." As we began plotting our next move, a sense of grim purpose settled over us. Frederick had crossed a line, and he would soon learn that messing with Sage Allen was a grave mistake, one he wouldn't soon forget. In the days that followed, Cora's online digging unveiled a troubling pattern. Frederick's name cropped up time and again, linked to similar schemes across multiple states. Packages filled with random, high-value items would arrive at unsuspecting victims' doorsteps, only for Frederick to surface later, demanding payment under the guise of settling bogus debts. The sheer audacity of his con left me reeling. How could he stoop so low? I muttered, pinching the bridge of my nose as the evidence mounted on Cora's laptop screen. I knew he was troubled, but this is a whole new level of depravity. Cora's expression hardened, her jaw set in a tight line. Clearly, he's spiraling out of control. We need to put a stop to this before someone really gets hurt. Her words struck a chord deep within me, dredging up memories I'd long tried to bury. Frederick's descent into petty crime and shady dealings had been a source of constant tension within our family, driving an irreparable wedge between his parents and the rest of us. I could still hear the echoes of heated arguments, accusations hurled back and forth like daggers. "He's just a kid, Sage. Boys will be boys," my aunt would plead, her eyes desperate for understanding. But my mother's gaze would remain steely, unwavering. "That kid is a menace. Mark my words, he'll bring nothing but trouble to this family." At the time, I had dismissed their words as mere hyperbole, the overblown ramblings of adults caught up in their own drama. But now, faced with the undeniable evidence of Frederick's misdeeds, I couldn't help but wonder if those long-buried enmities had finally taken root, blossoming into something far more sinister. "Why now, Frederick?" I found myself whispering, my fingers tracing the faded pages of an old family photo album. "What do you want from me after all these years?" Beside me, Cora's fingers flew across the keyboard, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I think I might have found our answer," she murmured, her voice laced with a mixture of disgust and triumph. On the screen, a news article flashed, a mugshot of Frederick, his expression defiant even as the headline blared details of his latest arrest. Fraud, embezzlement, racketeering. The charges were staggering, painting a portrait of a man drowning in a sea of debt and desperation. "He's broke," Cora surmised, her eyes meeting mine with grim understanding. "And you know what they say about people with nothing left to lose." A chill ran down my spine as the pieces fell into place. Frederick's sudden resurgence in our lives, the escalating packages, the brazen attempts at extortion, it all led back to one inescapable conclusion. He was targeting me, his own flesh and blood, in a last-ditch effort to claw his way out of the pit he'd dug for himself. As the realization washed over me, a wave of steely resolve rose within my chest. This was no longer just about packages or petty scams. This was a battle for the soul of our family, a reckoning long overdue. And Frederick was about to learn that karma had finally come calling, with a vengeance. The packages kept coming, each one more extravagant and valuable than the last. A gorgeous diamond tennis bracelet, a top-of-the-line laptop, even a sleek virtual reality gaming system, still sealed in its box. With every delivery, my sense of unease grew, morphing into a simmering rage that threatened to boil over. It was during one of our nightly vigils, poring over the security footage, that Cora's phone trilled with an incoming call. She shot me an apologetic glance before answering, her expression quickly shifting to one of concern. "Theo, what's going on?" she asked, her brow furrowing as the voice on the other end crackled through the speaker. Theo was an old family friend, a veteran cop who had always looked out for us. If he was calling at this hour, it couldn't be good news. Slow down, Cora urged, waving me over to listen in. You're saying you found something on Frederick? My heart lurched at the sound of his name, and I leaned in closer, straining to catch Theo's words through the tinny speaker. Deep in debt, over his head with some real nasty characters. Theo's gruff voice echoed. Looks like he might be trying to pull off some kind of scam, targeting someone close to him for a big score. Cora's eyes met mine, a silent understanding passing between us. Of course, it all made sense now. Frederick's desperate financial situation, his sudden reappearance in our lives, the escalating packages. It was all part of an elaborate scheme to bilk me out of every penny I had. That low-life son of a... I muttered, my fists clenching involuntarily. The sheer audacity of his plan, the betrayal of targeting his own family, ignited a fury within me unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Cora placed a gentle hand on my arm, her touch grounding me in the moment. Thanks for the heads up, Theo, she said into the phone, her voice steely with determination. We'll handle it from here. As she ended the call, a weighted silence hung between us, thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Cora broke the stillness, her words slicing through the air like a knife. We have to stop him, Aunt Sage, no matter what it takes. I nodded, my jaw set in a grim line. Absolutely, that snake has gone too far this time. A plan began to take shape in my mind, a daring gambit that would force Frederick to show his true colors once and for all. But to pull it off, we'd need help. Someone with insider knowledge, someone Frederick would never suspect. Call your cousin Blake, I instructed Cora, my voice leaving no room for argument. It's time we brought the rest of the family into this. As Cora dialed the number, I felt a surge of grim satisfaction coursing through my veins. Frederick had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, in thinking he could slither his way back into our lives and bleed us dry without consequence. This time, there would be no more second chances, no more empty promises of reform. This time, justice would be served, and Frederick would finally answer for his litany of sins against our family. The annual Allen family reunion was always a boisterous affair, a chance for distant relatives to gather and catch up over heaping plates of Mom's famous potato salad. But this year the cheerful banter and laughter felt forced, a thin veil barely concealing the undercurrent of tension that crackled through the air. As I scanned the crowded backyard, my gaze landed on Frederick, holding court in the corner with a small cluster of cousins. His booming laugh grated against my nerves, and I felt my hands ball into fists at my sides. This couldn't go on any longer. Exchanging a meaningful glance with Cora, I steeled my resolve and began weaving through the throngs of people, making a beeline for Frederick's little coterie. As I drew closer, his eyes met mine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a flicker of unease cross his features before his trademark smirk snapped back into place. Well, if it isn't my dear cousin Sage, he drawled, raising his beer in a mock toast. To what do we owe the pleasure? I felt the eyes of the others upon me, their gazes curious, expectant. This was it, the moment of truth. Cut the crap, Frederick, I spat, my voice low and dangerous. We know what you've been up to with those packages. A hush fell over the group as Frederick's smirk faltered, his bravado slipping for the briefest of moments. But just as quickly, he regained his composure, letting out a dismissive chuckle. Packages? What are you on about, Sage? You're starting to sound a bit paranoid in your old age. The jeers and snickers from his little entourage only fueled my anger, and I felt my pulse quicken as I stepped closer, invading his personal space. Don't play dumb with me, I snarled, jabbing a finger into his chest. We have evidence, video footage of you sneaking around my property, the paper trail linking you to similar scams across the country. It's all there, clear as day. Frederick's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw a glimmer of panic flit across his features. But just as quickly, he schooled his expression into one of feigned indignation. These are serious accusations, Sage, he scoffed, puffing out his chest in a show of bravado. You'd better have some solid proof before slandering my good name like this. A tense silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. This was the moment, the chance to back down, to defuse the situation and walk away. But as I met Frederick's defiant glare, something inside me snapped. You're right, I growled, my voice dripping with venom. "I do have proof, and I'm going to make sure the whole family sees it." With that, I whirled around and stormed away, leaving a stunned Frederick in my wake. As I marched back towards the house, Cora fell into step beside me, her expression a mix of concern and admiration. "That was intense," she murmured, her eyes wide. "Are you sure you want to do this, Aunt Sage? There's no going back after this." I didn't hesitate, my mind made up. Absolutely. It's time for Frederick to face the consequences of his actions once and for all. As we made our way inside, I could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes boring into my back. But I didn't care. This was about more than just packages or petty scams. This was about justice, about reclaiming our family's dignity from the clutches of a man who had squandered it for far too long. And as I dialed Theo's number, I knew that the reckoning had finally arrived. The next few days were a flurry of activity as Cora, Theo, and I put the final pieces of our plan into motion. We knew Frederick would be monitoring the situation closely, waiting for his next opportunity to strike. And that's precisely what we were counting on. "Are you sure you want to go through with this, Sage?" Theo asked, his brow furrowed with concern as he triple-checked the hidden cameras we'd planted around my property. "This guy seems like bad news. I don't want you getting caught in the crossfire." I met his gaze, my jaw set in determination. "I'm sure, Theo. It's time we put an end to Frederick's games once and for all." Cora stepped forward, her expression mirroring my own resolute demeanor. "We've got your back, Aunt Sage. This scumbag isn't going to know what hit him." With a sharp nod, Theo signaled that everything was in place. "All right then, let's get this show on the road." The bait was simple, another high-value package, this time containing a sleek, top-of-the-line drone with all the bells and whistles. We knew Frederick wouldn't be able to resist such a tempting prize, and sure enough, within hours of the delivery, the security feeds crackled to life. There he was, skulking around the periphery of my property, his eyes darting back and forth like a cornered animal. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched him inch closer, his movements furtive and calculated. "He's going for it," Cora whispered, her fingers tightening around the edge of the laptop screen. We held our breath as Frederick crept up to the front porch, snatching the package with a greedy swiftness before retreating back into the shadows. But this time, he wasn't getting away so easily. "That's our cue," Theo growled, his hand already reaching for his radio. "Let's move in." In a blur of motion, we sprang into action, Theo's team of officers converging on my property from all sides. Frederick's eyes went wide as the net closed in around him, and for a moment I almost felt a twinge of pity at the sheer terror etched across his features. Almost. "Frederick Allen, you're under arrest for fraud, extortion, and a whole host of other charges," Theo barked, his tone leaving no room for negotiation as he slapped the cuffs around Frederick's wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." But Frederick wasn't going down without a fight. As the officers hauled him towards the waiting squad car, he craned his neck in my direction, his eyes burning with a poisonous mixture of rage and desperation. "You think this is over, Sage?" he spat, his words laced with venom. "You have no idea what you've just stepped into. This is just the beginning." A shiver ran down my spine at the implicit threat in his voice, but I refused to show any outward sign of fear. Not now, not after everything we'd been through to get to this point. "Save it for the judge, Frederick," I countered, my voice steady and unwavering. "Your reign of terror is over." As the squad car peeled away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The weight of Frederick's looming presence, the constant anxiety and uncertainty, had finally been lifted from my shoulders. But even as I basked in the momentary triumph, a nagging voice in the back of my mind reminded me that this was far from over. Frederick's parting words echoed like a sinister promise, a harbinger of storms yet to come. Cora must have sensed my unease because she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around me in a fierce embrace. "Don't worry, Aunt Sage," she murmured, her voice thick with conviction. "We've got this. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." And in that moment, surrounded by the unwavering support of my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would emerge victorious. Because when it came to defending our loved ones, there was no force on earth that could stand in our way. The atmosphere at the Allen family reunion was electric, charged with a palpable tension that crackled through the air like static electricity. As I scanned the crowd gathered in my backyard, I could see the whispers, the furtive glances in my direction. Everyone was buzzing about the events of the past week. Frederick's dramatic arrest, the topic on everyone's lips. Part of me felt a twinge of guilt at the prospect of airing our dirty laundry in such a public forum. But the other, larger part of me knew that this was a reckoning long overdue, a chance to finally expose Frederick's misdeeds and hold him accountable for the pain and chaos he'd sown within our family. Cora must have sensed my inner turmoil because she leaned in close, her voice low and reassuring. "You ready for this, Aunt Sage?" I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve, and gave her a curt nod. "More than ready. It's time we put an end to this once and for all." With that, I stepped forward, my movements commanding the attention of the assembled crowd. A hush fell over the gathering as all eyes turned towards me, a heady mixture of curiosity and apprehension hanging thick in the air. "Family," I began, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "I know you're all wondering why I've called this little impromptu get-together today. The truth is, there's something that needs to be addressed, a cancer that has been festering within our ranks for far too long." A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd, but I pressed on, undeterred. For years we've turned a blind eye to the actions of one person, a man who has shown time and again that he has no regard for the sanctity of our family or for the values we hold dear. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. I'm talking, of course, about Frederick. At the mention of his name, a palpable shift occurred, as if a collective gasp had been sucked from the lungs of every person present. Frederick's supporters shifted uncomfortably, their gazes darting back and forth while others leaned forward, rapt with attention. "Some of you may have heard whispers about his recent activities," I continued, my voice hardening. "The packages, the scams, the outright extortion attempts. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's all true, and we have the evidence to prove it." With a sharp nod to Cora, she queued up the video footage we'd compiled, the large screen behind me flickering to life with grainy images of Frederick skulking around my property, his movements furtive and guilt-ridden. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as the damning footage played out, each frame more incriminating than the last. And then, the pièce de résistance, the video of Frederick's arrest, his snarling face contorted with rage as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. As the footage concluded, a heavy silence hung in the air, thick and oppressive. All eyes were on me, 1,000 unspoken questions burning in their gazes. Finally, a voice broke through the stillness, trembling with barely contained emotion. "Is it true?" Frederick's mother croaked, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Did you really do all those terrible things, son?" For a long moment, Frederick said nothing, his gaze fixed on the ground, his shoulders slumped in defeat. But then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded, a barely perceptible dip of his chin that spoke volumes. I didn't have a choice," he muttered, his voice tinged with a mixture of defiance and shame. "I was drowning, backed into a corner. Sage was the only one who could help me out of this mess." A chorus of gasps and outraged cries erupted from the crowd, but I remained stoic, letting the damning truth of his words hang in the air like a noxious cloud. As Frederick was led away, his footsteps echoing hollowly across the yard, I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me. The cancer had been excised, the festering wound finally lanced and drained. But even as I basked in the momentary triumph, I knew that our work was far from over. This was just the first step in a long journey, a journey to heal the rifts that had been torn open within our family, to rebuild the bonds of trust and kinship that Frederick had so callously shattered. And as I looked out over the sea of faces, their expressions a kaleidoscope of emotions ranging from shock to anger to grim determination, I knew that we would emerge from this trial stronger than ever before. Because at the end of the day, we were Allens. And no matter what storms raged around us, our family would weather them together, united and unbreakable. The weeks following Frederick's arrest were a whirlwind of activity. With his confession and the damning evidence we'd gathered, the case against him was airtight. He was slapped with a laundry list of charges: fraud, extortion, racketeering, you name it. As the full extent of his crimes came to light, The family was left reeling, struggling to come to terms with the depths of his betrayal. But through it all, I remained steadfast, channeling my energy into something positive, a mission to ensure that no one in our community would ever have to endure the kind of trauma and turmoil that Frederick had inflicted upon us. It started small, with a few neighborhood watch meetings and workshops on recognizing the signs of elder abuse and financial exploitation. But as word spread of our efforts, the momentum grew, drawing in more and more volunteers eager to lend their voices and their time to the cause. You know, when all this went down, I was really worried about how it would impact the community, Theo admitted one evening as we strategized over cups of lukewarm coffee. But look at what you've managed to build here, Sage. It's incredible. I shook my head, a wry smile tugging at the corners of my lips. I'm just doing what needs to be done, my friend. After everything we went through with Frederick, I couldn't sit idly by and let others fall victim to the same kind of predatory behavior. Cora, ever my stalwart ally, chimed in with a proud grin. My aunt, the unstoppable force for good. Who would have thought your retirement would lead to all this? We shared a laugh at that, the warm camaraderie a balm for the lingering aches and pains of our recent ordeal. But even in those light-hearted moments, I never lost sight of the larger mission at hand. The real work began in earnest a few months later, when our grassroots efforts caught the attention of the local authorities. Before I knew it, I found myself sitting across the table from the district attorney herself, outlining our plans for a comprehensive community outreach and education program. What you've accomplished so far is admirable, Miss Allen, the DA said, her eyes shining with a mixture of respect and determination. But we can take this even further. With the right resources and support, we can implement preventative measures on a much larger scale, protecting vulnerable populations across the entire county. And just like that, our humble neighborhood watch evolved into something far grander, a full-fledged initiative with backing from law enforcement and local government agencies. Suddenly we had access to funding, publicity campaigns, and a platform to reach thousands upon thousands of residents. The days blurred together in a flurry of town hall meetings, educational seminars, and one-on-one consultations. I found myself crisscrossing the county, sharing our story and imparting the hard-won lessons we'd learned from our confrontation with Frederick's depravity. And through it all, I could feel the tides shifting, a groundswell of awareness and empowerment rippling through our communities. Elderly residents, who had once been easy targets for scammers and con artists, were now armed with the knowledge and resources to protect themselves. Families were having open and honest conversations about financial security and safeguarding their assets. It was during one of our packed community forums that the true impact of our efforts really hit home. As I scanned the sea of faces before me, I saw a tapestry of humanity. Young and old, from every walk of life, united in a common cause, and in that moment, I knew that we had achieved something truly special. This was no longer just about bringing Frederick to justice or settling old scores. This was about creating a lasting legacy, a bulwark against the kind of predatory behavior that had nearly torn our family apart. And as the thunderous applause washed over me, I felt a profound sense of pride and purpose swell within my chest, because in the end, that's what truly mattered. Not the trials and tribulations we'd endured, but the way we had risen above them, emerging stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. We were no longer victims, but warriors, armed with the knowledge and the determination to protect what mattered most, our loved ones, our community, our very way of life. And as I looked out over that crowd, I knew that our work was far from over. But with each life touched, each person empowered, we were building something truly special. A legacy that would endure long after the sting of Frederick's betrayal had faded from memory. A legacy of strength, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to justice and community. A legacy worthy of the Allen name. The warm summer breeze carried the tantalizing aromas of freshly grilled meats and sizzling street food as I strolled through the bustling gourmet festival. My heart swelled with pride, knowing that my passion for promoting healthy eating habits had helped make this event a reality. Little did I know that this joyous occasion would soon take an unexpected turn, casting a dark shadow over the memories of my past. As I admired the vibrant array of local vendors showcasing their culinary creations, a familiar voice pierced through the lively chatter, sending a chill down my spine. "Well, if it isn't Lila, fancy meeting you here." I whirled around, my breath caught in my throat as I came face to face with Mark, my ex-husband, accompanied by his new wife, Elise. A sudden wave of emotions washed over me, a potent mix of anger, resentment, and an undeniable twinge of envy at the sight of their polished appearances and the air of affluence that surrounded them. "Mark, Elise," I managed to utter, mustering a forced smile. "It's been a while." "Indeed, it has," Elise chimed in, her perfectly manicured nails glistening in the sunlight. "It's so nice to see you managing to keep yourself busy with, well, whatever it is you do these days." Her thinly veiled condescension stung, but I refused to let her words diminish the sense of accomplishment I'd worked so hard to cultivate. Before I could respond, Mark intervened, his tone dripping with false concern. "Lila, you're looking well. I trust your little nutrition business is keeping you occupied?" I bristled at his dismissive remark, but years of emotional turmoil had taught me to keep my composure. "It's more than just a little business, Mark. My work has a real impact on people's lives, something you never seem to grasp." An uncomfortable silence descended upon us, the festive ambience suddenly muted by the weight of our shared history. Mark's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and I could sense the tension brewing beneath his carefully crafted facade. "Well, we mustn't keep you any longer," Elise interjected, her saccharine smile masking a deeper disdain. "I'm sure you have clients to attend to." With a curt nod, they turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me to grapple with the conflicting emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. As I stood there, surrounded by the joyous laughter and the mouth-watering scents that had once brought me such delight, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loss, not for the man I had once loved, but for the naive, trusting woman I had been. As I walked away from the festival, my mind spiraled back to the fateful night that shattered my world. Mark's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway, his face etched with guilt. "There's been an emergency at the hospital," he muttered, already halfway out the door before I could respond. This wasn't the first time he had been called away unexpectedly, and I had learned to accept the demands of his profession. But something felt different that night, a nagging sense of unease that I couldn't quite shake. Hours ticked by, and Mark's absence stretched longer than usual. Concern gave way to suspicion as I paced restlessly, unable to silence the doubts gnawing at the back of my mind. Finally, exhausted and desperate for answers, I decided to venture out and uncover the truth myself. The drive to the hospital was a blur, my knuckles white as I gripped the steering wheel with a mixture of determination and dread. But as I approached the familiar entrance, a sinking feeling consumed me. Mark's car was nowhere to be found. Panic set in, and I found myself wandering aimlessly, searching for any clue that might explain his disappearance. That's when I saw it. A sleek silver sedan parked in a secluded corner of the lot, its tinted windows offering no insight into its occupants. Summoning every ounce of courage, I crept closer, my heart pounding in my ears, and then a sound that would haunt me for years to come, laughter, followed by the unmistakable rustle of clothing and the muffled murmurs of intimacy. The world around me seemed to freeze as realization dawned, shattering the illusion of the life I thought I knew. Paralyzed by shock and disbelief, I stumbled away from the scene, my vision blurred by a torrent of tears. Weeks turned into months, and Mark's lies only compounded, each explanation more flimsy than the last. And yet, I clung to the fading hope that the man I loved still existed beneath the web of deceit. But fate had other plans. One fateful evening, as I was sorting through the mail, an innocuous envelope caught my eye. Inside, a series of incriminating photographs, proof of Mark's infidelity, captured in excruciatingly vivid detail. And there she was, the woman I would come to know as Elise, her smug grin searing itself into my memory like a brand. The confrontation that followed was explosive, a maelstrom of accusations and denials that culminated in a bitter separation. Mark, ever the smooth operator, wasted no time parading his new trophy wife before the world, leaving me to pick up the shattered pieces of my life. As I stood amidst the bustling festival, the memories of that harrowing time came flooding back, each carefully constructed lie Mark had fed me, replaying in my mind like a twisted mantra. But this time, I refused to be the victim. This time, I would have my revenge. In the aftermath of my divorce, I found solace in the one thing that had always brought me joy, my work. Pouring my energy into building a thriving nutrition consulting business, I slowly began to heal the deep wounds left by Mark's betrayal. It was during this time of personal growth that I met Owen, a kind-hearted widower and elementary school teacher. Our paths crossed at a local health fair, where his genuine interest in my work and gentle demeanor immediately put me at ease. "I admire your passion for helping others," he remarked as we chatted over steaming cups of herbal tea. "It's so refreshing to encounter someone who truly cares about making a positive impact." Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I found myself laughing without the weight of past trauma holding me back. Owen's warm smile and genuine concern for my well-being were like a soothing balm on the scars left by Mark's deceit. As our friendship blossomed into something more, I couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between these two men. Where Mark had been consumed by ambition and a relentless pursuit of success, Owen embodied humility and a deep appreciation for the simple joys in life. "You know, Leela," he mused one evening as we strolled hand in hand through the park, "true wealth isn't measured by material possessions or status. It's found in the connections we forge, the lives we touch, and the legacy we leave behind." His words resonated deeply within me, a testament to the profound shift in my priorities and values. No longer was I captivated by the allure of wealth and prestige. Instead, I found myself drawn to Owen's unwavering integrity and his genuine concern for the well-being of those around him. With each passing day, the specter of my past faded, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and a determination to embrace the second chance life had offered me. "You've been through so much," Owen remarked one night, his fingers gently caressing my cheek. "But your resilience and strength are an inspiration. I'm honored to be a part of your journey." As I gazed into his eyes, brimming with sincerity and understanding, I knew that this man represented everything I had been searching for. A partner who valued honesty, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of trust. In that moment, I vowed to leave the ghosts of my past behind, to embrace the future with open arms, and to never again allow myself to be defined by the mistakes of others. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was truly free. Months after my chance encounter with Mark and Elise at the food festival, I found myself attending a charity gala hosted by our city's most prominent organizations. As I adjusted the sleek, navy blue dress Owen had surprised me with, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of nervous anticipation. "You're going to be amazing tonight," Owen whispered, placing a reassuring kiss on my cheek as we made our way into the elegantly decorated ballroom. Little did I know that this evening would mark a turning point, a pivotal moment where the karmic scales would begin to shift in my favor. As the event unfolded, I mingled with colleagues and community leaders, sharing insights into the work I was so passionate about. Owen beamed with pride, never missing an opportunity to sing my praises to anyone within earshot. It was during one such conversation that I caught a glimpse of Mark and Elise entering the room, their designer outfits and air of self-importance impossible to miss. A familiar pang of resentment tugged at my heart, but before I could dwell on it, Owen swept me into his arms. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention?" he announced, his voice ringing out with confidence. "I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge someone truly special." As the room fell silent, Owen turned to me, his eyes shining with adoration. "Lila, your unwavering dedication to improving the lives of others through your work has been an inspiration to us all. Tonight, we celebrate you and the countless lives you've touched." A thunderous applause erupted as Owen presented me with a beautiful crystal plaque inscribed with words of gratitude from the community. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth and admiration of my peers, I felt a surge of empowerment unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Mark and Elise, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and barely concealed disdain. It was as if the universe had conspired to shine a spotlight on my accomplishments, forcing them to confront the glaring contrast between my life and theirs. As the evening drew to a close, I couldn't help but savor the sweet taste of vindication. Owen had orchestrated the perfect scenario, subtly but effectively showcasing the depth of my impact while highlighting the shallowness of Mark and Elise's perceived superiority. On the drive home, I found myself reflecting on the twists and turns that had led me to this point. Once a victim of betrayal and emotional turmoil, I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and surrounded by those who truly valued me for who I was. And as for Mark and Elise, their presence at the gala had served as a stark reminder of the emptiness that lurked beneath their carefully curated facade, a hollow existence built on lies and superficial trappings. For the first time, I felt a sense of pity for them, realizing that no amount of wealth or status could compensate for the absence of genuine fulfillment and meaningful connections. As Owen's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining in a tender embrace, I knew that the path ahead would be one of triumph and personal growth, leaving the shadows of my past firmly in the rearview mirror. The charity gala had barely concluded when I found myself face to face with Mark and Elise once again. As Owen excused himself to grab us some refreshments, the tension in the air was palpable. "Well, well, if it isn't the guest of honor," Elise sneered, her perfectly painted lips curling into a condescending smirk. "I must say that little display earlier was quite impressive." Mark remained silent, his eyes narrowed as he regarded me with a mix of disdain and something else, a flicker of envy, perhaps. I steeled myself, determined not to let their petty jabs pierce my newfound confidence. "Elise, always a pleasure," I replied, my tone laced with sarcasm. "I'm glad you enjoyed the evening. It's all in service of a good cause, after all." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind as she searched for a weakness to exploit. "Yes, well, we all have our hobbies, don't we?" she quipped. "Some choose to make a real difference, while others settle for playing nutritionist to the masses." The barb stung, but before I could respond, Owen reappeared by my side, his presence serving as a steadying force. "Mark, Elise," he greeted them warmly, his arm snaking around my waist in a protective embrace. "I hope you've been enjoying yourselves. Lila's work is truly inspiring, isn't it?" Elise opened her mouth to retort, but Owen cut her off with a disarming smile. "In fact, I've been considering getting more involved myself. Perhaps you could enlighten me on the inner workings of your business ventures, Mark." The shift in tone was subtle but unmistakable. Owen's words carried an undercurrent of veiled accusation, as if he possessed knowledge that extended far beyond the superficial realm of Mark's supposed success. Mark visibly tensed, his eyes darting between Owen and me, searching for any sign of weakness or vulnerability. But he found none, for in that moment I felt an overwhelming sense of empowerment, bolstered by Owen's unwavering support. "Yes, Mark, do tell us about your endeavors," I echoed, my voice steady and assured. "I'm sure we'd all love to hear about the sacrifices you've made to achieve your aspirations." The air grew thick with tension, charged with unspoken truths and barely concealed barbs. Elise's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in power dynamics, while Mark's carefully constructed facade began to crack, revealing glimpses of the insecurity and guilt that festered beneath. In that moment, I knew that the tide had turned. No longer was I the one cowering in the shadows, haunted by the echoes of betrayal. Instead, I stood tall, emboldened by the knowledge that karma was slowly but surely exacting its due. As Mark and Elise beat a hasty retreat, their excuses falling flat, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction course through my veins. This was merely the beginning, a premonition of the reckoning that awaited them, a harbinger of the retribution they so richly deserved. Owen's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine in a silent gesture of solidarity. "You're incredible, you know that?" he murmured, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. And in that moment, surrounded by the echoes of our hard-won victory, I knew that the path ahead would be one paved with redemption and the sweet taste of long-awaited justice. Weeks after the charity gala, I found myself standing alongside Mark at a prominent community health conference. As we awaited our turn to speak on the panel, the tension between us was thicker than the humid summer air. "Owen, ever the supportive partner, sat in the front row, his eyes shining with pride as he watched me prepare to take the stage. Little did Mark know, Owen had a few surprises up his sleeve, surprises that would soon unravel the carefully crafted facade that Mark had spent years constructing. As I took my seat behind the sleek podium, my confidence soared, fueled by the knowledge that Owen had orchestrated a powerful alliance with one of the event's major sponsors. The stage was set for Mark's downfall, and I could hardly contain my anticipation. Mark's speech was a masterclass in self-aggrandizement, filled with grandiose claims and thinly veiled boasts about his supposed contributions to the medical field. I watched with a mixture of amusement and disgust as he basked in the fleeting admiration of the audience, oblivious to the impending storm brewing on the horizon. When my turn came, I rose to the podium with a newfound confidence, my words carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom and a steadfast commitment to truth. As I spoke of the transformative power of nutrition and the importance of community outreach, I could see Mark's expression shift, his bravado slowly giving way to a flicker of unease. But the true coup de grace came when Owen took the stage, his presence commanding an air of authority that caught even me by surprise. With a few well-chosen words, he revealed his connection to the event's major sponsor, a prestigious health initiative, and announced his intention to collaborate closely with my endeavors. The impact was immediate and palpable. Suddenly, my credibility and professional standing were elevated to new heights, casting a shadow over Mark's carefully cultivated image. And as if on cue, Elise's face contorted into a mask of barely concealed rage, her eyes burning with envy and resentment. It was in that moment of triumph that Elise made her fatal mistake. Rising from her seat, she attempted to undermine my speech with a barrage of snide remarks and thinly veiled insults. But her words fell flat, and instead of diminishing my accomplishments, she only succeeded in exposing her own deceitful nature to the entire audience. As whispers and gasps of disbelief rippled through the crowd, Elise's true colors were laid bare for all to see, a desperate, vindictive woman willing to stoop to any depths to maintain her illusion of superiority. And in that moment, the karmic scales tipped inexorably in my favor. Mark, paralyzed by the unfolding spectacle, could only watch in horror as his once powerful facade crumbled before his eyes. The audience that had once hung on his every word now regarded him with a mixture of pity and disdain, their respect eroded by the harsh light of truth. As the conference drew to a close, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers and newfound allies, each one eager to congratulate me on my triumph and distance themselves from the toxicity that had enveloped Mark and Elise. And in the midst of it all, Owen stood by my side, his arm draped around my shoulders, in a silent declaration of solidarity and unwavering support. "You did it," he murmured, his eyes shining with pride. "You exposed them for who they truly are." And in that moment, I knew that the path to redemption had been paved, the karmic scales finally balancing in my favor after years of suffering and betrayal. The aftermath of the community conference was a whirlwind of congratulations and newfound alliances, but the true reckoning was yet to come. As Owen and I made our way to the after-party, arm in arm, I could sense the palpable tension in the air. Mark and Elise were already there, huddled in a corner with a few of their remaining allies, their expressions a mixture of barely concealed rage and desperation. As our eyes met, Elise's lips curled into a snarl, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the stem of her wineglass. But before she could launch into another tirade of insults and accusations, a voice rang out from across the room, cutting through the din like a knife. "Mark, is it true?" The question came from a mild-mannered colleague of Mark's, a man whose quiet demeanor had always made him fade into the background. But tonight, his eyes burned with a newfound intensity, fueled by the revelations that had unfolded during the conference. Mark's face paled as he turned to face the man, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. "Is it true that you've been falsifying patient records?" the man pressed, his voice steadily rising. "That you've been prioritizing your own financial gain over the well-being of those you've sworn to protect?" A hush fell over the room as the weight of the accusation sank in. Suddenly, the whispers and rumors that had swirled around Mark's unethical practices crystallized into a damning reality, laid bare for all to see. Elise's perfectly composed mask began to crack, her eyes darting frantically between Mark and the growing crowd of onlookers. But it was too late. The floodgates had opened, and a torrent of long-repressed truths came surging forth. One by one, colleagues and former associates stepped forward, their voices rising in a chorus of condemnation. Stories of Mark's lies, his manipulations, and his callous disregard for the well-being of others echoed through the room, each revelation more damning than the last. And at the center of it all stood Owen, his quiet presence a beacon of integrity amidst the chaos. With a few carefully chosen words, he connected the dots between Mark's professional misdeeds and his personal betrayals, painting a vivid picture of a man consumed by greed and ambition. As the night wore on, the walls seemed to close in around Mark and Elise, their once formidable empire crumbling under the weight of their own deceit. Colleagues who had once fawned over them now turned their backs, their admiration replaced by scorn and disgust. And through it all, I stood tall, my hand clasped firmly in Owen's, a silent witness to the poetic justice unfolding before my eyes. For years, I had been the victim, cowering in the shadows of Mark's lies and Elise's cruelty. But now the tables had turned, and I basked in the sweet taste of long-awaited retribution. As the night drew to a close, and the last of Mark's supporters slunk away in defeat, I found myself surrounded by a sea of friendly faces, colleagues, community leaders, and newfound allies who had witnessed my triumph and rallied to my side. And in the midst of it all, Owen pulled me close, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You stood your ground, and the truth prevailed." In that moment I knew that the path to redemption had been forged, paved with the remnants of Mark and Elise's shattered facade. The scales of karma had finally balanced, and a new chapter of my life was just beginning. The soft glow of candlelight danced across the intimate confines of the cozy restaurant, casting warm hues over the faces of the small gathering. Owen's hand found mine beneath the tablecloth, his fingers intertwining with my own as I surveyed the smiling faces of those who had stood by me through the tumultuous journey. As glasses clinked and laughter filled the air, I couldn't help but reflect on the winding path that had led me here. A path paved with heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately redemption. "A toast," Owen announced, rising to his feet and raising his glass, "to new beginnings and the strength to overcome adversity." A chorus of cheers erupted, echoing through the dimly lit space as we celebrated not just my personal triumph, but the resilience of the human spirit itself. In the aftermath of the conference, the dominoes of Mark and Elise's downfall had continued to fall, one after another. Professional censures, legal battles, and a steadily dwindling circle of allies had left them isolated and disgraced, their once formidable reputations in tatters. But tonight wasn't about them. It was about embracing the future and the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. As the evening wore on, conversations ebbed and flowed, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the clinking of silverware against plates. And through it all, Owen remained by my side, his unwavering support a constant source of strength and inspiration. It was during a lull in the conversation that he gently cleared his throat, his eyes shining with a mixture of love and determination. "Leela," he began, his voice steady and assured, "from the moment we met, you've been an inspiration, a beacon of resilience and unwavering commitment to what truly matters in life." A hush fell over the table as he reached into his pocket, producing a small, velvet box. My breath caught in my throat as he lowered himself to one knee, the flickering candlelight dancing across his face. "You've shown me the true meaning of courage and perseverance, and I can't imagine walking this journey without you by my side. Lila, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" The room seemed to fade away as I gazed into Owen's eyes, our shared history and the promise of a future together crystallizing in that single, pivotal moment. Tears of joy streaked down my cheeks as I nodded, rendered speechless by the depth of emotion swirling within me. A thunderous applause erupted, our friends and allies rising to their feet in a chorus of celebration. As Owen slipped the ring onto my finger, a symbolic gesture of our commitment, I knew that this moment marked the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by the shadows of the past, but by the radiant promise of a future built on love, trust, and the unwavering bond we shared. In that moment, I realized that the long, arduous journey had been worth it. Every heartache, every betrayal, every tear shed had led me to this point, this moment of profound joy and redemption. As I gazed around the table at the faces of those who had become my chosen family, I knew that the path ahead would be one of growth, healing, and the unbreakable bonds forged through shared experiences. And as for Mark and Elise, their names faded into the recesses of my mind, eclipsed by the overwhelming sense of gratitude and contentment that washed over me. For in the end, karma had indeed run its course, and I had emerged victorious, not through acts of vengeance or bitterness, but by embracing the power of forgiveness and letting go of the past that had once held me captive. As Owen's lips met mine in a tender kiss, I knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of a future built on love, trust, and the unbreakable bonds that had sustained me through the darkest of times. And in that moment, I was truly blissfully free.